I'd like to call to order this work session special called meeting of the Moore County Board of Education, Monday, March 2nd at 2 p.m. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Mr. Dennison, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I certainly will.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Before we get the next motion, I want to go ahead and mention to those who might be tuning in online or who have looked at our agenda that there have been some requests to hear a discussion on the coronavirus and what efforts the school might be making to stay ahead of the game with that. And we will not get to that point until during board comments at the end of the actual agenda today. So if you're looking for that information, it's not going to come up until much later today. We're not going to change the agenda to do that. I'm just going to lead you through plans that are currently underway. So, medical discussion at the very end. Ms. Thompson?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion the board enter into closed session to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel information pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11, A1, A5, and A6, and General Statute 115C-319, and to consult with the board attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11, A3.
Is there a second? Second by Dr. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so we will now be moving into closed session. When will we be returning?
And for those that are present, we do not anticipate being very long, so maybe about 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. We'll be back soon.
Okay, let me call this meeting back to order. We have quite a long agenda today, so Dr. Grimacy, let's begin.
Madam Chairman, we would start by me asking the board if it would respond to the personnel recommendations that I just offered in closed session.
All right, is there a motion to approve the personnel report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Thompson, second by Mr. Dennison. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Madam Chairman, at this time, I will defer to the chair and the legislative liaison for item 4A.
All right, Mr. Dennison, Dr. Brown, and Ms. Wallen Miller serve on the legislative committee.
Yes,
So-
I will make a few brief comments and ask Helena and Betty for any additional comments. When you look at the priority issues, we have listed 5 as priority issues on the legislative agenda. And at this point, I don't think we need to go into detail, but those are the ones we feel right now. And Helena, any comments, other comments?
No, the only other comments I have is that some things have come off the legislative agenda from last year. Just want to point that out. Some of our work on the calendar work doesn't need to be highlighted anymore, given where we're going. And I think about the teacher allotments, it's really focusing on the grades 4 through 12, the impact that the teacher allotments, because of the K-3 class size mandate, what that has done for grades 4 through 12. So the focus there is adding more on the allotments for grades 4 through 12. Will offer some text edits to some of these before we vote on them next week. So be looking for those.
All right.
Just that we looked very carefully at what our priority issues are. And again, looking at the classified employee pay to keep it at least at the state standards of $15 an hour. And looking at our student support personnel, knowing what has happened with our students and the necessity of having those people available for nurses, social workers, counselors, psychologists, is such a vital aspect of keeping our students safe. And again, with the school resource officers to try and get one per school as we move toward that. Not that it will happen right away, but gradually putting it in.
And the school grades, that's happening right now. As a matter of fact, there's going to be a meeting Friday that I'll probably go to in Raleigh because I have to be up there for a board of directors meeting anyway. And then there's going to be another meeting on the 11th. I'm pretty sure I know what the Board of Education is going to give them, and they've made it way more complicated than it needs to be, as usual. So they're going to recommend some intermediate steps for the time being, and my position is going to be, we don't need to take intermediate steps. We can get this, go 50-50 and get it right now, and they can do whatever they want to later.
Mr. Dennison, the other thing I would add to this is that some of our priorities in the top 5 are related to what we read in the Leandro report too, so there's really not a lot of difference there. And so in ensuring that the state of North Carolina adequately funds the resources that we need in the classrooms is what you see here in many of our top priorities. More teachers in the classroom, more support staff at the schools to help our students meet the many needs that they have. And that, again, follows very closely to what the Leandro report.
Legislator has 60 days to give them an answer since it came out, the report came out.
So the committee is working on what they're recommending at this point? or
Well, the
has
Board of Education has nothing to do with the Leandro thing. Their goals are going to be pretty much the same. This is the legislature getting the board's recommendation on what to do, and have to make sure it doesn't get too complicated, and they go with 50-50 and just get rid of that, and they can do their other stuff later.
Yeah. The response to the Leandro report will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I have to add that we cannot do enough for our classified employees. And if anything we can do that will increase their payments would be most appreciated throughout the county and continue to allow us to ensure that our schools are maintained, our buses are driven properly, our sanitation level remains high, and all those things happen. It won't happen without good classified employees.
1.2, employees have gotten some raises the past few years, so to me, the focus should be on what they're making, not whether or not they got a $10 a paycheck increase. What they're making right now is substandard for raising a family. So it's the pay they're getting, not, so don't say, well, they haven't gotten raises or anything like, it doesn't matter. The raises they've gotten, they're still not getting paid what they need to get paid. So just leave the raises out of it and say,
That's a good point, Ed.
you know.
Any other comments or questions?
With your permission, Madam Chair,
Hold one moment.
as long as all board members are done on the
Well, I was
legislative
just going to
priorities.
encourage
Yep.
board members, if you have comments or questions about this, to be in touch with our legislative committee, pass them on if there's something that concerns you, if you'd like more information about it, before this comes up next Monday. And I'm guessing we'll be getting an updated copy with edits
And-
before Monday.
And we will be coming out with talking points for each one of these with statistical information on what's happening right now. So we're not just talking about something, we can show facts.
Dr. Hennessy?
Madam Clerk, deadline for the document for the board packet? Wednesday morning. Okay, since it is the board, what wiggle room can we give them? Wednesday morning is too.
Oh,
Because tomorrow's is a busy
It's a
day
busy
for some
day.
board members, so should we say first thing Thursday morning? Maybe, how about lunch on Thursday? Yeah, all right, lunch on Thursday. All right. How's that, Ms. Wallen-Miller? Mr. Dennison?
Yeah,
lunch?
I'm not gonna have the other thing ready by Thursday. I mean, it's been 100 hours on it already. It's
No,
gonna take.
You're talking about the talking points.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
the
well, we don't
the
need that
document
yet.
for board action is
Yeah.
just the
Elena's
priorities.
gonna take care of that.
Okay, very good, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, legislative liaisons. Madam Chair, if I could, just to add a statement, I want to thank the board. I think the staff appreciates the priority issues, but I also really appreciate, on behalf of our classified employees and our teacher advisory committees who addressed you at the work session a month ago, it's clear that you've given careful consideration to their input, and on their behalf, I want to say thank you.
Thank you. We value their service.
Absolutely.
And this document really shows that, and I think they'll appreciate it. With your
All right,
permission,
let's
Madam
move
Chair? Excuse me. At this time, I'll invite Mr. Eklund and Mr. Eklund and Mr. Eklund. Okay. Mr. Eklund to come
Up,
forth.
please, Mr. Eklund.
And, Madam Chair, items B, C, D, E, and F will be addressed by Mr. Eklund. There's a common theme here. All of these are items that are provided in the budget, but all of them are items that exceed $50,000, and therefore, even though you've approved it budgetarily in the past, because of the purchasing authority threshold, you must consider these for final authorization. Is that accurate, Mr. Eklund?
Yes, that's
Good-
correct.
Good lead-in. So Kent will sort of refresh your memory on the device refresh plan, okay? And not to overuse the word refresh, but sort of look at the plan and the budget for that, and then in that context, sort of walk you through rapidly on B through F. Is that an accurate introduction, Kent?
Yeah, that's correct, correct.
Okay.
The refresh plan is primarily for the first three items
Okay.
to cover, so I can go over that. And I'll apologize for Mr. Johnson, I think he's tied up, he's got a lot of stuff going on with the STEM and the robotics programs.
Very
so.
good. Okay, sir, you, go ahead.
Thank you. As you remember, Dr. Grimsey, Madam Chair, members of the board, we presented on January 6th the updated device refresh plan. We've been talking about what our strategy was to deal with the non-increase in our digital learning budget and how we can address that, make sure that we have adequate devices for the students and the teachers. And as you can see from this plan, we've extended the refresh of student devices in this updated plan to 48 months from the normal 36 months on the lease purchase agreement, with the understanding that we're going to more durable devices, and also that the warranty and the accidental damage protection and theft and loss protection of these devices extends for that entire 48-month period. So this is the refresh plan across for the students, how that maps out, and then you can see how this also maps out for the teachers. And then this is the funding, digital learning funding, just to demonstrate how this fits within the current $750,000 of funding that we anticipate in the upcoming fiscal year. based on
So
that.
your recommendations are all in the context of this particular slide?
That is correct. That is correct. So I will leave it on the, I will put up the, I don't know if we want to go to, the first item on the agenda is the student devices, so I'll leave that up for the students. So the first item on the agenda is the refresh of student devices for the Area 1 and 2 612 students. This is a lease purchase agreement for 3,900 Chromebooks. This will provide enough devices for the Area 1 and 2 612 students, and these devices, again, have an improved durability. It will be a lease purchase over 48 months. We've estimated this at 3,900 Chromebooks to make sure that there are sufficient devices with the reassignment plan. We may adjust that, but 3,900 is more than enough to cover the anticipated number of students in these areas. The total cost is $300,516.26 yearly, with a total of $1.2 million over 4 years. We also have an agreement with Dell Financial Services to delay the first invoice until July 1. The reason we're pushing for this approval now is also because of the shortened summer intercession period, to make sure we could get them in, can prepare them, have them ready for when school is going to start early in August. So I'm available for any questions on
Any
this
questions
this
on item B?
Questions, anyone?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eklund.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the teacher laptop lease purchase for Southern Middle and West Pine Middle. I'll go to the teacher slide here just to show how that maps out. This is a total of 125 Hewlett-Packard X360 convertible laptops, a similar device that we're supplying to all teachers with the complete flip capabilities and touch, so that it's a very useful device for the teachers. Again, 48-month lease purchase, covered by warranty and accidental damage protection for that entire lease purchase period. That's $23,623.58 yearly, a total of $94,494.32 over the 4-year period. Again, we're delaying the first invoice until July 1st of 2020, but getting the devices in early to help us prepare for the shortened period over the summer. And that's 125 devices, if I didn't mention that already. And that's enough to cover all the certified staff at Southern Middle and West Pine Middle and get them finally up to date on devices.
Questions from board members?
So MacBooks are going to be out after this year?
That is correct. That is correct. We'll allow them to finish the year. They're well out of date, but we will get the devices in, but they will pick them up for the start of the next school year.
For the loading of the programs and things like that, do we have sufficient staff that will be available over the summer to help with that?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we're getting them early in as well, so we can start the imaging process.
Thank you.
The student devices come prepared, but the teacher devices do take a little bit of work to get prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With your permission, Madam Chair?
Let's move on.
Item D, Mr. Eklund.
Okay, and thank you. The next item is a teacher laptop lease purchase for the K-5 teachers. Those teachers are also due for refresh, and this is to take for 300 devices, again, the Hewlett-Packard convertible laptops on a 48-month lease purchase, $66,146.02 yearly, for a total of $264,584.08 over the 4 years. Again, deferred till July 1st of 2020. 350 devices will be enough to cover all the teachers that are not covered by the technology packages in the new schools, Aberdeen and the Southern Pine schools. And of course, McDee's got new devices when those teachers came in. So this addresses the teachers that have not been taken care of as part of the new school construction.
Questions from board members?
None here.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And now the next two, and Mr. Eklund corrected me earlier, the first three related to our multi-year sustainability plan. The next two involve our federal E-rate reimbursements and our,
Excuse me, Dr. Grimacy, I'm sorry. The next item is related to our core data infrastructure, the systems
I
that
stand corrected.
run
Thank you.
the network as a whole. And the last item is the federal E-rate.
proceed.
Okay, thank you. The next item is a data center, our data center server and storage refresh lease purchase. This is to take care of our needs in the data center, the servers that run the network as a whole. This is something that we've had on our agenda for a while, but now we have the opportunity with some funding in the next year to to address this need in our data center, refresh the core servers and the storage that actually run the network here, but also by refreshing those devices. And I apologize if it was a little confusing in how this was worded in the executive summary, but what we intend to do is refresh the device, the servers and storage that we have running in the data center now. The equipment that is not fully end of life, but is not really current hardware, and we wouldn't want to keep running in production for a long period of time, we will move that to an off-site location for disaster recovery. So in the case that the data center burned down, which we need to be prepared for that kind of eventuality, that we would be able to bring that older equipment online to maintain operations here in the district. So our finance servers, our transportation servers and everything, those things could continue running. They wouldn't run as fast, but it would actually allow us to just have a business continuity plan.
Where is this off-site server located?
This would be at MCNC. That's a state organization that runs the North Carolina Research and Education Network. MCNC stands for Microcomputer Center of North Carolina, but everybody knows them as MCNC. They have data centers in Raleigh where you basically, for a minimal cost, it would be less than $5,000 a year, they would give us a certain amount of rack space that we can install our equipment in, and it would just sit there running in a sort of semi-shutdown state where it's synchronizing with the new servers that we have here in Moore County. And then if things went down here, those servers could be brought up and then start running operations.
And have we had an off-site storage facility before for our
No, we
data
have
center?
not. That's actually, I mentioned the executive summary. That's disaster recovery, and having a fully fleshed out disaster recovery plan is one thing that's been on my agenda for a long time, and this is an opportunity to finally address that. You know, our district operations are critical, and being able to deal with that when the data center, I mean, we've all gone through this when we've lost power in the data center and had to basically shut down operations here in the district. It's not been a comfortable situation.
This is
So,
good that we're able to finally get to a point where we can
Absolutely.
have that.
yes.
And this is within our budgeted 750,000
Well,
per year.
this is not
It
through-
says County Digital Learning Fund here.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is a mistake. I apologize for that, and we'll make sure that that's corrected. That is, it should be on our local funds that is covered, and that's already been provided for in the budget plan we've provided Mr. Cox for the upcoming fiscal year in mapping out our zero-cost budget.
That would
of
be
doing that.
existing funds, though, not new funds.
This would not be new funds. That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct.
And so between now and next week, we want to make sure we tweak that.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Any other questions from board members?
Thank you.
Okay. Item F.
And the last item on the agenda, this is the network provider contract for our WAN services. This is the services that provide the fiber connectivity between all of our schools and from the schools back to the data center. So this is critical infrastructure that basically all of our internet, everything that the students do, everything that we do on the internet goes across this network. This is fully paid for by E-rate funds, 70%, and the remaining 30% is paid for by state 079 funds. But because of the size of this contract, we do need to get board endorsement for this contract before we can proceed. We are at the end of the contract period. There's a maximum contract period you can do, so you have to go through this E-rate process on a regular basis, at least 3 years, sometimes up to 7 years. This contract is for 3 years with 2 optional extensions for 2 years if we continue to be happy with our provider.
And no local dollars involved.
No local dollars are involved in this. This is
And
fully covered.
these are budgeted federal and state dollars.
That is correct.
Questions from board members? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Eklund. Mr. Barath, if you'll come forward and chair with your permission. All right, a similar item with Mr. Barath. As you know, last month you approved construction material testing and special inspection agreement for Pinehurst Elementary School. Similarly, we've got to do the same thing at our other schools, all within the construction budgets. But because they are over the threshold of superintendent's authorization, we've got to validate that the board has approved that expenditure, even though it's buried in the budgets of each one of these. So just to make sure everything's on the up and up, Mr. Barath.
Thank you, sir. And as Dr. Grimsey has said, these inspections are required by the North Carolina Building Code, Chapter 17. Each of these projects is identified in the attachment along with the budget. And on the budget, you can see a line item for construction material testing and special inspections. These costs at all four schools totals just over $430,000. These are within the budget by about $49,990 savings.
That's across all the projects.
all
and
four
Within
projects.
each project, the amount varies a little bit,
fluctuates.
yeah.
So what was the overall savings, John?
Just over $49,900.
That's across multiple projects, Dr. Brown, so, yep. Any questions for Mr. Brath? Okay, thank you very much. Item H. At this time, we got Ms. Faw. And as you all know, as we progress towards an innovative year-round calendar, we're looking at just sort of retooling our whole concept of our students learning over the summer, moving towards more of a summer intercession plan. But it just so happens that multiple ones of those programs are still managed in traditional ways by the state. And so she's here today to seek your consideration of approvals that the state requires for selected programs within our summer intercession program. She's already seated and I'm eating up her time. Go ahead, Kate.
Good afternoon. The Moore County Board of Education is required by NCDPI to approve selected intercession plans that utilize state and/or local funding for extended learning opportunities. This summer, Moore County Schools will provide multiple extended learning opportunities for students who need additional learning to occur outside of the regular academic calendar. Additionally, these intercession opportunities allow schools the option to re-administer some of those state assessments. The opportunities listed in this presentation outline the extended summer learning programs that require board approval. The list does not include the numerous intercession enrichment opportunities that are offered through Moore County Schools, including but not limited to STEM camp, athletic camps, performing art camps, and multiple academic camps. So the first of these is the Read to Achieve Camp, which is managed by the Curriculum and Instruction Department. It will run from June 15th to July 14th, with a break for the 4th of July holiday. This is a daily camp happening from 8 o'clock until noon. This camp is guided by Read to Achieve laws, and who is eligible is determined by the state. This camp is free to families with transportation provided. Well, strongly encouraged, it is not required that students participate.
And daily means Monday through Thursday.
Yes, sir. On the summer Monday through Thursday calendar. Thank you.
Right.
And do you have locations
was
for
just
those?
gonna ask
The reading camp locations are still being worked out at this time, although Dr. Johnson might have solid locations shortly.
We don't need the locations in order to secure state approval, but we do need board approval to
Correct.
pursue
Correct.
that. Yeah.
They don't ask where, but they just ask when and how much. In addition to reading camp, many schools are also offering Intersession Schools. These programs are offered to help students at various subjects remediate the year's curriculum, better prepare for the next grade level, and/or support students with excessive absences in content remediation. Additionally, there is an opportunity for schools to re-administer tests in grades 3 through 8 math EOGs, end of grades, grades 5 and 8 science EOGs, biology, NC Math 1, and NC Math 3 EOCs. Since this is the first year of the new ELA end of grade, end of course assessment, scores will be delayed until August, and therefore those tests are not available for re-administration this year.
I have a question
Yes.
about the sites that are located. Are there any, is West End then the closest one on that side of the county? We're not going up to the northern part of the county to have any of these?
The northern part of the counties are not currently planning on offering an intercession school, so those would be the closest. yes.
So will buses be taking them down? Will there be availability for busing for those?
For reading camp, buses are provided. For all intercession camps, there is no transportation provided.
Do you have to be a current student at that school to attend the intercession camps?
Not required, but that's handled independently by the principals of the schools. Students who do take any re-administrated assessments will have the higher score included in proficiency calculations for the school. However, those scores will not be included in growth analysis or school accountability for the educator effectiveness measures. Aberdeen Elementary, McDeeds Creek, Pinehurst, Sandhills Farm Life, and West End are hosting intercession schools at dates between June 8th and June 30th. It varies at each school. School is offered from 8 until noon, again, that Monday through Thursday calendar, and it is totally separate from the Read to Achieve camp. Participation is highly encouraged, but it is optional. Transportation must be provided by the parent, as I said. All 5 of the traditional middle schools are offering intercession schools at the dates between June 8th and June 30th. These schools also run from 8 until noon and will participate, with participation being optional but highly encouraged. Transportation, again, is provided by the family. And then finally, all three of the traditional high schools will have an intersession school from June 10th to July 23rd from 8 to noon daily, again with a break for the 4th of July holiday. Students at the high school will be doing summer credit recovery courses. The high school focus on credit recovery. And they do that through the GradPoint online program or a credit recovery package provided by the teacher depending on the situation of each individual student. Despite the extended length of the high school intersession, any re-administrations of tests still must happen before the June 30th deadline so that we can get them submitted for this school year's cycle. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Just so I'm clear, the intersession schools, do you go through the whole session, or can you come in for a week at a time? How does that work?
Each school dictates their own, although at the elementary, middle school, it tends to be the entire length of the time unless there's certain situations on a one-on-one basis. At the high school, it's done until they complete the credit recovery. Since they're working on completing credit for credit, when they finish that coursework, they're finished at the high school level.
And there's no transportation and no food provided because it's before lunchtime.
That
Is
is
that right?
correct, with the exception of Read to Achieve Camp, which is covered by transportation.
And we might make note that the elementary intercession school is at the new Aberdeen Elementary
Yes,
School.
absolutely. He's very excited. Is he smiling back there behind me?
Yes, he is.
Let me ask this, if a local organization wanted to come in and bring lunch every day, they could. For instance, if they worked, could they do that? Could they work with
They would
the
work with the principal.
Yes, the
on
individual
that.
They'd have to
case
work
by
with the
case.
principal to do
That would
that.
be,
Case by case.
that would
Case
be
by case,
localized, yeah.
Any questions?
Okay,
Very
thank you.
good opportunities.
Ms.
Hope
Ball.
people will avail themselves of it.
Dr. Metcalf, items I and J, and probably more, but the next two involve matters related to our innovative year-round calendar. Take it away, Dr. Metcalf.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here on behalf of the Calendar Committee. We are charged with bringing forward a draft calendar for the 2021-22 school year. By regulation, we're required to put that out for public comment, gather feedback from the public. We'd like to do that, put it on the website between March 10th to April 3rd, and then gather that feedback and bring it back to you at your May 4th work session. This year, we not only are bringing forward a draft calendar of dates for the 2021-22 school year, but we also would like to gather feedback on the format of the calendar. Over the last number of years, we've received some feedback that the colors were distracting, and when they printed out, they would print out in different shades, and sometimes it was hard to tell a required day from a student day from a early release day. And so we tried something different. We've been reviewing different calendars that are used across just the state and the country, and came back with this as a possible starting point. So we'd like to put it out, get feedback on the format of the calendar as well during this period of time, and then bring it back to you with a recommendation, both for the dates of the calendar and the format at your May 4th work session.
And this is for the 21-22 school year, which is year after next. We
It
want
is
to make
just
sure
for the
that clear.
21-22 school year. We're always a year ahead when we bring a
That is
calendar to
correct.
you for review. I'm here to answer any questions that
I
you
know the name of this is an innovative year-round calendar. I know that is from the state. Is it possible we can call it something else? Because it's very confusing to many that we're calling it year-round when it is, it's really a modified calendar, is what it is.
It is a modified calendar. We are using the state wording on that, innovative year-round calendar. And that's how we're able to do something a little different with this calendar than what we've been able to do in previous years by describing it as a year-round calendar, including our intersessions, including the summer programs that Kate just spoke about. During that period of time, we consider this a year-round calendar, an innovative year-round calendar, and I think we have to describe it that way and use that title in order to keep the unique calendar that we're trying to put in place.
It's
That's the way all the
exciting.
regulations are for year-round. You gotta, it has to be called year-round.
Yeah.
Innovative year-round. It's not a true year, because we just left a few years ago, what I would have considered a true
True
year-round
year-round
calendar. So it's just confusing to parents, and I think we just all have to be aware that we have, when we talk about it, we have to talk about the intersessions that are available but not required for students.
Emphasize the benefit of it. I think that, you know, everywhere I go, particularly among teachers and parents and students, by the way, I've had lunch with students at each of our 3 high schools, and in each case, over these conversations, students have thanked me for this calendar. Seniors have been the only ones who complain because they wonder why we didn't do this before. So clearly there is a benefit. We're merely asking that everybody try to understand that in this case, this is a case where all the state does is ask us to comply with their regulatory language. That's basically it. And at the same time, though, the state holds us to a standard to rethink the whole year. And so it may not meet somebody's mindset of what year-round calendar what might have meant in the past, but it is a very exciting opportunity for us to retool summer, to think differently about summer, to be more dynamic about the summer, but also to align our regular school year with our community colleges.
Right.
And so I'm really hoping that folks can kind of get by the brand. We're not trying to just rebrand things here. We're really trying to do something that appears to be headed in the right direction for our students. And as of now, the state affords this opportunity. It's just that they do have some expectations that we take seriously student learning in the summer, that we think about the way we approach that, and that we don't make arbitrary decisions during the school year that are for the benefit and ease of adults, but rather which benefit our students. So I hope that helps a little bit too. But specifically for the calendar for 21-22, are there any more questions for Dr. Metcalf? Remember, the request from staff here is merely that the board will endorse the staff to gather public comment on the calendar.
I like the new format with the calendar down the sides. I think that's great. We did talk briefly about creating one that was almost like a student calendar that showed the days school was closed to students, so that parents were not trying to say, okay, here's an RW day, here's an AL day, and wondering what some of those were in regard to their student. I don't know if the potential exists to have a innovative year-round student calendar and an innovative year-round employee calendar made available.
I'll certainly take that back to the committee along with any other feedback that we get when we put it out. There has been talk about not doing that an employee calendar and a student calendar gets very confusing. So they did in the key, you'll notice in the key of the draft, they do note, for example, on RW, required staff workday, no students.
Right.
To try to clarify that, but certainly it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback that we get, and I'll take your comments back to the committee as well.
Yeah, anything that makes it easier to read.
Mhm.
I think the innovative year-round is absolutely a fantastic idea. All right.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, Dr. Metcalf, item J.
Yes, in addition to doing that draft, the committee also reviews the work of the calendar committee from the year before. And so we reviewed a check on the 2020-21 calendar. This is the calendar for next year. And we do have a recommendation for the change. Currently,
Dr. Metcalf, if you could, just remind the board when the board approved the 2021 calendar. When last year? What month or so?
July 8th.
July. Yes, July 8th, 2019.
And we took a little bit more time last year because it was a different approach. We got more community feedback last year, so we approved it late, but we did in fact approve it last summer for the coming school.
We improved it last summer for the coming school year. It was, next year, we got first year with the innovative year-round calendar, and we did a lot of community feedback around that. There's one date, however, that the calendar committee would like to revise. That is that we have traditionally had an early release day prior to the start of the holiday break in December, and that was not on the calendar. So we are recommending that we move the currently approved May 7th early release day that's in the 2020-21 calendar to December 18th, 2020. That will give us an early release day right before the holiday, and it won't change any hours, any instructional time during the year.
So just a minor tweak to a
Minor tweak.
calendar that's already been approved. Any questions, board members? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Metcalf, Dr. Johnson, and Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Dr. Grimsey. Madam Chair, board members, we appreciate the opportunity to come back to you today and put forth for your consideration and potential approval our applications from our continually low-performance schools for restart designation. Mr. Cox and myself last month's board meeting, presented some foundational information about what the restart designation was and what flexibilities it gives our continually low-performance schools. Today's presentation doesn't add any additional new information, but just grounds us in that through the applications that we're bringing forward for your review and potential approval. You may recall that last month we talked about that our continuing low-performance schools are schools that have been designated as low-performing 2 of the last 3 years. In Moore County schools, that's Aberdeen Elementary, Robbins Elementary, and Southern Middle Schools. The restart status designation allows those schools to apply to have the same flexibility under North Carolina General Statute as North Carolina charter schools. And those flexibilities include funding flexibility, which does not mean we get any additional funds, but the state funds are just given to us differently. You may remember Mr. Cox talking about we get those funds in just a one big lump sum, one big pot, instead of through the different allotment formulas, et cetera. That can net you savings that you're able to apply and press in to those continually low-performing schools, but we do not get any additional funds. So it allows us to have that funding flexibility, personnel and licensure flexibility as you're looking at staffing your schools. It also allows us to have the flexibility of the K-3 class size law. Our charter schools do not have to follow that. It gives you flexibility to do some creative things there. And it also allows for the potential flexibility of calendar law and calendar flexibility to do some creative things there. And so those flexibilities are allowed under the restart designation. And so today we bring to you the applications for your consideration. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction requires us to apply, first getting your approval as a board, and then submitting that to the state of North Carolina Department of Public Instruction for their review, and the State Department, or State Board of Education's review and potential approval. That's about a 2-month process once you were to potentially approve those applications. And so our schools and their school improvement teams would get that verification that that flexibility has been approved potentially in May. And that's where they could really dig into these potential flexibilities and begin planning their school improvement plans of improvement based on those potential flexibilities if approved. And that's why last month we really talked about the restart status as being nothing more than a catalyst for opening up opportunities for flexibility for our low-performing, continually low-performing schools. Attached to the executive summary are each of our continually low-performing schools' restart applications, where it talks about their goals for increased academic achievement, which is aligned with each of their plans of improvement, which you've seen before. It also lists out those 5 areas of flexibility for each of those schools, potentially to be implemented upon approval and to be used by those school improvement teams to be planned and utilized. Also attached to that application is a very treetop budget that really is about their current level of funding, their current level of Title I funding, and their current lump sum state funding. So it's their current funding. And we're required to attach that to the application to show that we understand how the budget works and how it would work if those flexibilities were given. But it's not, we, again, will not get any additional funds as a result of this restart designation if approved by you and the State Board of Education. The last thing you see attached to each of those applications is a current copy of each school's plan of improvement or school improvement plan, and connected into that school improvement plan where those flexibilities could be utilized. So those are the three things that you see attached, or, you know, the three things you see there for each school. And so we're certainly open to any questions that you may have. Our principals have joined us today, just in case you have any questions for them. But we appreciate your consideration of these applications. Again, upon your approval, we would submit them to the state and for the state board's consideration and potential approval.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
With Aberdeen condensing into one, will it still have that low-performing grade on it? It will, because,
It would. That testing history and low-performing designation is connected to the school number. When Aberdeen Elementary consolidates, they will continue to have the Aberdeen Elementary school number. The Aberdeen primary number will be, I don't know the official term, but basically be dormant. Thank you. I was going to use a less articulate term. It will be dormant, as I often do, Dr. Grimson. It will be dormant, and it will now use the Aberdeen Elementary. Great question.
and then my other question was, oh gosh, it just left me. I'll get back. It just left me.
I had a question about the treetop budgets that you have. So that it showed some potential savings for each school. Are those that could be used for something else within the Restart model? Must those be used within that school? Can they be used in any of the Restart schools? Or do they have to be used in that Restart school? Any savings?
Technically, the savings are district savings. But we would be committing to look at how we utilize those savings in those continually low-performing schools. Yes, ma'am. There may be possibility to combine those net savings and utilize something that helps all three schools.
That's
So
what I was
all
wondering.
something we'd want to have on the table. But I would say to you that we would commit to use any net savings on those schools and pushing back into those schools.
And I personally would agree with that. Obviously, I can't speak for the board. The other thing is, you listed those 5 different Restart opportunities. And from what I'm hearing is that they don't have to implement all 5, but those are the ones that are open to them.
Correct.
And that the schools will discuss as a part of their school improvement plan about what they would want to do. And that could include additional staffing to meet certain needs that they have. It could include additional administration, counselors, those type of things. Is that correct?
Good. Based on availability of funds, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Would you have the flexibility of your budget to change it during the year? Because you know, things are going to happen that may not work out exactly like you want. But are there any restrictions by the state from having you move monies around in your budget?
No.
I would say no, but Andrew is our expert. He would be the one that would have to help us facilitate that. But as long as you're not, if you have a person, you've got to continue to, and you've committed to that person, you have to continue to budget for that person. But as far as moving things around that big lump sum, Andrew would be our expert on that.
Yeah, within the pot, you have to, as I mentioned last month, you have to do a conversion into the Restart pot from your existing allotments. Once it's in that pot, you have the flexibility to do what you choose to.
Right.
But once you make that conversion, you cannot change the conversion.
Okay. So once you decide it's going to be a person, you can't change it.
Right, so if I convert that position, those dollars to move it over there, I can't go back and say, well, hey, I didn't want to do that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
That's an annual,
Annual.
annually
Yes.
those decisions can be made.
Yes, correct.
With the calendar flexibility that you talk about as a possibility, how will, with the schools being in basically 3 different areas, other than Aberdeen Elementary and Southern Middle being fairly close in proximity, will one of the pieces be considered, since we're looking at a flexible calendar for 2021 as it is, will that be taken into consideration, number 1? Number 2, how will the bus routes be affected? And I know you can't answer that right now, but these are considerations that cause me to think. For family members, if we extend times, will parents have opportunities to look and see what's available for them, whether that will meet their needs for their students?
Say, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, we would be considering all that. This is, the calendar piece is something that through all this, we would be working in collaboration with the schools. So they wouldn't be in isolation, we wouldn't be in isolation, our staff and our schools would need to work very closely together.
They like short answers.
Yeah, and once the approval process has been finalized and the schools get started with their plan, would they be required to do some type of periodic reporting of what's going on? Is that monthly, quarterly?
There's a yearly report that we will collaborate with the schools.
So
to
it's at the
submit
end
to
of each
state
year?
board. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I didn't know if there was like an interim report that they would need to provide, maybe like at the end of the semester type, but it's at the end of each year that they would
That's
have to.
required to the state.
Okay, okay,
But we could require
okay.
something.
Have we looked at how we might evaluate it mid-year to see how things are going?
Absolutely, as we're actually always having those conversations, and it really is something that as we redesign all our support services, that we think a quarterly process of looking at what we're doing, how we're serving our schools, and how we might need to tweak some things. So that would be no different for our restart schools and low-performing schools, of looking at almost at a quarterly process of, okay, what might we need to tweak to better support those schools?
We certainly don't want to be putting another test in anywhere.
Sure.
So whatever method might be used, something other than let's administer another test. One other question. So the K-3 class size mandate does not have to be enforced at a restart school.
Correct.
So we would not be, so if we get one child too many and would require another teacher at another school, we are able to actually balance it out.
Yes, ma'am, that's exactly right. If we went over that, whatever it would be, you wouldn't have that same requirement at a restart status school. You might also be able to make a decision with your school improvement team that we're gonna have our kindergarten through third grade classes at a couple kids higher in order to gain an additional position out of that and to do some creative things with that position to support those kids. So it gives you that flexibility to do some of those creative.
Madam Chair, may I? I just want to make sure that I make clear that the restart status is intended to benefit the school at which the restart status exists. So we would not want to use that as an excuse to keep that school from complying with the law in order to save us money. This is intended to support that low-performing school. So I know you didn't intend for that to be the purpose, but I want to make sure the public is clear that we're not supporting our principals' interests in this in order to just simply get away from complying with state regulations. State regulations are only one factor which constrains the creativity of our teachers and our principals and our parents from doing what's right for students. And so even when you remove state regulations, you sometimes find out that transportation challenges are the reason why you can't do something, or respect for employee contracts are reasons why you will choose not to do something. Our principals would tell you that just because they get this freedom doesn't mean that they really are that free. It simply opens the door for potential freedom. Now, they have not spent a lot of time providing you with a plan of detailed, what will you do if you get this freedom? Because frankly, they're not authorized to do that. They are not authorized to do that until they have your permission to think that way. And you are not authorized to really give them the green light to do it until the state approves the application. Then it comes back, then our principals and school improvement team members can look at this package of potential freedoms, if you will, and then they can come back to us and say, you know, thank you for this. Given this, we're going to try this and we're going to try that. And so we're grateful for your consideration. Tim, am I in line with your thinking?
Well, and one thing I was thinking with this K-3 issue is that if by chance we're able to get another position out of it, I noticed that Aberdeen Elementary had a very large EC population, for instance, and maybe one of our classes could benefit from having a TA. a TA in that K-3 class, which might now, they might not have one. So is that the kind of thing that could come out of this?
Excellent example.
Okay, that's where I was
And frankly, that
thinking.
one's more practical. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're looking at that, that's really the kind of margin that our school improvement teams and our principals are really gonna find. Very seldom are they gonna be able to turn the world upside down. They're gonna be looking for those marginal benefits that they think will add value to their efforts to raise student achievement.
I have two questions. One is, what are the odds of our applications being approved?
I think they're high.
Okay. And is there anything in the Restart program, if all of a sudden the schools get, within the period of time that's allowed, get above what's normally required to have a Restart school, that they have to go back to traditional?
At this point, they've maintained the status
3 years?
as long as there's
Okay.
No sunset.
Yeah, there's no sunset.
Okay,
Thank
that
you.
doesn't matter how well they do. Okay, that's good.
They maintain the
Well,
status.
Once you get them.
Well, it does matter how well they do. If they don't
I know
improve
that.
their status, then, you know, there are steps the state can take, that, you know,
Let me
Restart
rephrase
status
that.
has
We
nothing
don't have
to
to
do
worry
with
about them
it.
doing too well to lose Restart.
That's correct.
status.
The accountability of it is, are we utilizing it with fidelity? And is the board supportive of that? And you are, I know you are, and that's the accountability on it. Yes, sir.
Well,
I believe
and
you shared with us that it started with just 5 schools the first year, and now it's well over 100 and
180, over 180.
180. So something is going right somewhere, and if it's definitely worth our investigation and possible implementation if approved,
Yes, ma'am.
to provide that flexibility.
Well, and it's exciting to be able to have that flexibility that our charter schools are able to enjoy, and to be able to give us some opportunities to maybe have additional staff either in the classroom or in the administration to support our teachers and our students. So I think that's really important. And I mentioned this earlier, but the idea of the financial management piece would be very interesting to me, how that is reported on and how we keep tabs of that. So what we're able to save once that becomes more defined than the current treetop, and how that is managed, I think is something that I'd be very interested in seeing, and probably the rest of the board too, how we allocate those funds and protect those funds for those 3 schools.
Definitely something I can work with Andrew on once if it's approved, once we get
Right,
into
and
that.
it's not, and at this point, it's not worth putting a lot of effort into until we have the approval from the state.
And the big goal is for kids to improve. That's it.
Yes, sir.
That's the reason we're doing it.
Amen.
And give them the
That's
tools
the
they need
goal.
and the resources, yep.
All right, so when will we hear back from you again, if this is approved next week?
Hopefully in the May timeframe.
In
Hopefully in the
May.
May timeframe. We've been advised it's about a 2-month process.
And that will give schools time to get some, obviously, we don't expect the whole program to be enacted this coming year. That's asking a lot, but that we'll begin to see some changes, some innovations coming through with it.
And we, of course, will keep you apprised as we keep moving.
Well, we're excited about the innovations that are taking place anyhow. I think
Oh, yeah.
Restart just opens the door for potentially more creativity on the part of our people, that's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, thank you. Dr. Johnson, Dr. Locklear are going to stay put for item 11.
Yes. Good afternoon. Dr. Locklear and I are here to share with you 2 additional courses to add to our high school course guide. You may remember that last month I came and presented the course guide to you and we do this every year, with the additional courses that would be offered to our students. In that time, over the last month, 2 more courses were approved by the state, and so we're bringing those 2 courses to you today to add them to our course guide. So, you'll remember that our course guide moved online last year. It is a site that's linked off the Moore County Schools webpage. For those that are interested in exploring our course guide, if you go to the Moore County Schools homepage, go to the Academics tab and the drop-down menu. There is a link down there that says High School Course Guide. And so that's how you get to our high school course guide. The courses that we are presenting today are in response to the College Career Ready Graduates, which is a legislated priority. It's also called CCRG. I see a typo right there,
Yeah,
CCRG.
I missed that,
And so it is a priority that we provide remedial coursework for students at the end of their high school career who have a GPA of 2.2 to 2.79. And so the idea is that there are modules, online modules, that are provided by the state. It's at no cost to us, by the state via the NROC or EdReady system. It's a computerized online module system that the state will be purchasing for any student who's in that GPA range. And again, the platform is free of charge to us. This is a state initiative that's taken care of. So in order to comply with the law, we are looking to pull student GPAs in the middle of the junior year so that we can register them for these courses in the middle or for their senior year. And so it's English 4, enhanced with CCRG is the name of the course. So the English modules, the computer modules, they embed very nicely into the English 4 curriculum. And so we're looking just to have a separate section of English 4 that has these modules added in. The math, however, does not embed as nicely with the standards of the 4th math. So the state has approved its own course, CCRG math. And so the focus of that course would be getting the students through the content which is in these online modules. I should note that students who qualify for this and students who take these courses, this is really intended for students who plan to go to the community college or students who plan to go out into the workforce upon graduation. It's not typically for our students who plan to go to a 4-year university. We would want them in a standard 4th math class. So we did want to note that. The other benefit to these courses is that once they pass the modules, this saves them from taking any remedial coursework they would have had to take once they get to the community college. So this is actually saving them a few of those remedial courses that they would have had to take at the community college. Any questions about those 2 courses to add to our course guide?
As a state initiative, is there funding for faculty, teachers?
Not that I'm aware of at this time.
Okay. So it's an unfunded mandate.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
But I think it's reasonable that this doesn't duplicate. I mean, these would be students that would come out of another one way or another, these students would be in a English or a math section.
Reasonable. And it
Yes.
counts towards their graduation.
Right.
requirement.
It'd be nice if they added another X number of sections, but with current staffing, there are other reasons why we'll have pressure with pupil-teacher ratios, but this won't be one of them.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
I think it's great that they're replacing some of it with the remedial that you would have to take at the community college or even at a 4-year college. So I think that's great.
Let's add also, this does save parents money. It's yet another way. These would be students that might not qualify for the Sand Hills Promise Scholarship. They might not qualify for dual enrollment credit. It's just another band of students that the state has provided an opportunity for and one that our families will find could be helpful. These students don't have to pay for remedial classes later on. Any other questions from the board?
I'd just be curious to see some of the things that they have enhanced a class with, say an English 4 class. Will these curriculums be available online somewhere
it
in the
is-
near future?
Yeah, so it is through the EdRock InReady system, and if you go to their website, you can see some of their information. They have kind of just standard things that they offer, and so you can see some of the things that are offered there.
Okay,
Perhaps we could send the link to board
Absolutely.
members.
I can send
Dr.
that to you.
Johnson. Thank you.
thank you.
Before we excuse them, I'd be remiss, Dr. Johnson, when is your last day with us?
March 31st.
Bring that up.
March 31st, okay. Well, we'll have her next week, but
That's 2020, I assume.
Yes, sir.
on behalf of the
Not
board,
2021?
lest we don't have, hey, as Ronald Reagan would say, I paid for this microphone. Bridget, on behalf of the board, if we don't get the opportunity next week, just want to say thank you for your fine service to Moore County
Thank
Schools.
you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I've
and
enjoyed my
good
time.
luck.
Thank you.
At this time, Madam Chair, I'll invite Dr. Powers to come forward for items M and N.
Thank you, Dr. Grimacy. As we do each year around this time, I wanted to present for your consideration proposed student fee schedule for 2020-21, so for next school year. Do have a few proposed changes, the first of which would be to add a $5 fee for courses categorized as other semester-long elective courses in middle school. So if you look at the fee schedule, you'll see there is a $5 charge in middle school for courses such as art, band, chorus, orchestra, and also a math fee. This particular fee would add a $5 fee for additional courses that may be taken as a part of flex programs. Some of our schools do have semester-long, year-long drama programs that are not run as clubs after school, but as actual courses. Advanced art would be another option that's not on here. So this would cover any of those other additional semester-long elective courses in middle school. Next change would be edit wording related to digital learning and technology fees, and you're able to see that that's just a matter of changing a little bit of the wording there around that. Doesn't really change the content. Also to add McDeeds Creek as an elementary as a site offering childcare for 2020-21. We would also like to ask that the fees be increased for, this is for regular daycare, childcare at Bass Lakeview Elementary, Carthage Elementary, and would also include McDeeds Creek Elementary. And we would ask that that fee be increased from $525 a month to $600 a month for one child. The reason for that requested increase is, just to be honest, those daycare facilities generally, they generally are not profitable or marginally profitable, many times run a little bit in the red, and these additional fees are needed just to support additional costs for staff and supplies. And then finally, the last change, all of our after-school daycare fees will stay the same. We are going to make one change, a decrease in after-school care fees at Sandhills Farm Life Elementary from $80 for 2 children, $120 for 3 children, to $75 for 2 children and $100 for 3 children. And that would align and provide consistency among all of our after-school daycares at all of our schools. And just for you to be aware as well, those after-school daycare fees, very affordable in terms, if you think about, you're talking about $5 a day for 3 hours of child care after school. So a little more than that, but that's basically what that is. Those fees also go toward paying for staff and paying for supplies as well. All other fees would remain the same, and I'll take any questions that you have.
How much is it if you only have one child at the after-school daycares?
$40.
$40.
$40 a week for
So
one child.
that one's not changing.
That one is not changing, correct. It was already, for Sandhills Farm Life, it was already at 40.
Okay.
Yes.
Does any of that money come to the central office?
It does not. Any profit that they make would go to the school's general fund.
Individual school, general fund.
Individual school general fund. That money remains at that individual school, correct.
Even the school fees, correct?
School fees as well, correct.
And I'm sorry, I should have asked this earlier in the day, but are there any schools that do not offer after-school childcare?
We do have some schools that do not, so if they're not on this list, that means they do not offer.
Okay, so we only have it at, okay, wait a minute.
None of the middle schools except for Westmore.
Okay, okay, gotcha.
And High
And
Falls.
High Falls. And Westmore and High Falls actually added after-school care this year. It's the first year that they've had it, and they're doing actually very well with it, so that's a good
But it
thing.
helps parents who are working and they don't want their children to be at home alone, so it's a wonderful opportunity.
It certainly is, and very affordable.
And I know many of them help with homework afterwards, or at least provide the time and the space to do that, and there's a snack,
Generally
so
a part of that time as well,
yeah.
yeah.
very needed. So I know parents are very grateful for this.
Any other questions about the proposed student fee schedules? Or revisions to that? Thank you, Dr. Powers. Item N.
Okay. Out-of-state field trips for this month. We do have 6 requests for your consideration. The first of which is McDeeds Creek Elementary, who is requesting that their grades 3 through 5 students be allowed to travel to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The school would like to start a tradition of an annual third grade trip to the beach, but for this year only, they're also requesting that fourth and fifth grade students be allowed to attend the trip since it's new and those students have not yet had that experience with the school. The trip includes dinner and a show at Pirates Voyage, and there are numerous ELA science social studies standards that will be covered as activities planned. We'll reinforce more than 15 standards taught throughout the year, and the trip will be planned for May 8th of this year. Northmore High School is requesting that their concert and jazz band students be allowed to travel to Atlanta, Georgia to participate in the Music in the Parks band competition at Six Flags. Students will compete against other bands from across the region and receive feedback and ratings from highly qualified judges. That trip is planned for April 17th through the 19th. I have 3 requests from Pinecrest High School, two of which are for their men's golf team to travel to South Carolina for 2 different tournaments. The first of which would be in Myrtle Beach, the Palmetto Golf Tournament. That trip is planned for April 8th through the 11th, which is actually over spring break. The second tournament is in Aiken, South Carolina, the Southern Cross Junior Invitational. And of course, both these tournaments just allow the team to compete regionally against other very competitive and highly ranked golf teams in North and South Carolina.
We should say other highly competitive and capable golf
Other,
teams.
exactly.
Give them the opportunity to compete against our guys.
Exactly. The third Pinecrest request is for Orchestra students to be allowed to travel to Chicago, Illinois, to participate in the World Strides Festival of Gold. The Pinecrest Orchestra qualified to participate by receiving a superior rating at a lower festival this year, and that trip will be planned for April 4th through the 7th. And finally, Union Pines High School is requesting that concert band students be allowed to travel to Williamsburg, Virginia to participate in a music festival there at Busch Gardens. As a part of the trip, students will perform, and the wind ensemble will compete for placement and ratings there as well. That trip is planned for May 9th and 10th.
I'd like to see the county calendar for April and May for the number of orchestras and bands and chorus and various groups that are, yeah, and I'd love to see all the certificates and for achievement and merit that they're going to be bringing home.
It's quite extraordinary, because our students are being taken by their directors and coaches to places that they have to travel in order to find the level of competition that meets the standard that their directors and coaches have established. And I think it makes me feel quite proud.
Absolutely.
That our students are, A, qualified to compete at this level, and B, that they have directors and coaches and parents who support them in this endeavor. So we do appreciate your consideration, board members.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the younger kids traveling. I mean, kids going to Myrtle Beach doesn't sound like a big deal, but probably 50% of our kids have never even seen the ocean before, and it's a time that they see it.
I had a question about that. How is that getting funded?
At McDeed's.
Didn't say. It was, I think it said student funded, I
It is
believe, but they
student
had
funded.
money to cover anyone who couldn't go.
It is.
They were
Scholarships are
100%.
available from the school to cover the cost for any students who cannot afford the trip, and the goal there is that 100% of students will be able to participate.
And that's true for all our trips, the kids
Correct.
that can't afford it.
Right, right.
That pirate program, Pirates War, that is a good program. I went last year.
Expensive.
All right, any other
Any
questions?
other questions, board members? Madam Chair, the administrative staff looks forward to your guidance in establishing your agenda for next week, and we would particularly like to know which items you'd like to select for board action off of the consent agenda.
All right, so A, the legislative priorities, let's leave that on.
Legislative priorities, because we'll tweak.
We'll go back to that. So
tweak
that's
them.
gonna need to be on action. So if we do consent for B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, all of that, I mean, it's just making sure that people understand it's been open.
Yeah.
J, I think we should discuss again K, the restart program. And then L and M and N onto the consent.
So items A and K would be board action, everything else would be consent.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, at this point, let's take about a 10-minute break. Yes, please.
Mr. Brath, item 5A.
It's over here. Thank you. Fine, I have to sit as close as I can to this anymore to see. So, as with every month, an update on the projects for construction that are going on. Some of you have been at some of these in the past since the last update a month ago. We're going to start with Aberdeen Elementary. One of the things you could not see if you were out there for the tour last week is it from the drone. Nice little sun setting in the distance there. Beautiful image. You can see the extent of work that's been done with the foreground, with the parking and the drive area and the grading around back for the play fields and the establishment of the firing lane on the left. On the right, you can see the main entry road coming back to the bus lot, which I can say has been paved since your visit last week out there. Again, you can see it from moving around the building from the side of the bus lot, and you can see the gymnasium in the center there. Coming around where the deliveries would be on the south side of the project site and the play fields to the right, and looking down each of the classroom wings there. From the hallway, you can see down from the main entry, the lighting is in place, and they just started hanging the accent lights at the intersections, little replicas, I think, of the puff of smoke from the trains going down there. You can see some of the progress that was made down the main classroom wings as they're finishing and getting all the paint and the doors and the trim up. Typical classroom, they still have the protective covers on the light fixtures in there because they still have a lot of paint touch-up to do above that, so they didn't want to remove anything until that activity is completed in there. But the sink casework is in there. What's missing from all the classrooms are the student storage cubbies. Those have not been delivered to the project site yet for any of the classrooms. The gymnasium has made great strides since our last meeting. The flooring is down in there. The bleachers have been set. The mechanized shades are in the process of going up. And you saw some of the framing work going on for the risers at the stage platform area. The acoustic panels are up in the spaces too. A majority of them in the kitchen serving area. The equipment's being set and power's being connected and hooked up to all the units in there. And this, I went the day back after our tour just to get a photo of the pavement going down at the bus parking lot, so that it was completed that day out there. And again, we had a great tour with commissioners of the county commissioners as well as the town commissioners, Mayor Farrell, the Board of Education, and others that were able to join us that day, including some of the parents that helped with the bond referendum process. So great tour, great opportunity, and I realize I'm losing a lot of hair on the back of my head there. The project itself is continuing. It is past completion. The original contracted date was January 24th, and we're into March, and they are not yet done. We have requested that they provide us tomorrow at their meeting a recovery schedule yet again, and of how they're going to finish and when. There are many activities that still need to be completed out at the project itself, and we continue to apply pressure on them there, as well as try to find opportunities to help guide and direct them where applicable. They are at 88% paid on the project. We are slowing down our payment now to them. There's still in excess of $3 million remaining in the contract. And just as with McDeeds Creek, we will be evaluating the same process of withholding funds to complete activities, as well as any liquidated damages per the contract agreement.
Can you explain, I'm sorry, can you explain liquidated damages?
Yes, they have a certain time to reach substantial completion, and that is for beneficial use of the facility. And that was originally set at January 24th. Any calendar day after that, there is a fine for missing that date. And that continues to accrue until they hit substantial completion. Then they have 30 days to hit final, which is the final closeout. All documents, all punch list items are completed. Everything's turned in to us for ownership of the facility. Any day they pass that, there is a separate fee for that, or fine for that as well, and they're cumulative and they build upon one another. And so right now, that's in excess of about $350,000 on McDeeds Creek, and we are calculating this for tomorrow's meeting to advise them on where they stand. That make sense?
Is that 350,000 part? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Is that 350,000 at McDeeds Creek part of the 1.5 million that we're withholding, or over and above that?
It is part of the withholding.
Okay.
Easier to withhold it than try to get it back. Moving on to Southern Pines Elementary School. Progress continues with the project site. They've had a lot of challenges with the wet weather they've had and the rains, but they have managed to find ways to work within those confines and continue a strong, aggressive schedule. You can see the progress of the building. They're starting to get their metal roofing deck system down on the foreground. That is towards where Carlisle Extension would be in the front. So that's the one-story building area. In the back, you can see the two-story area that's already up to steel bearing elevation, and on the left, the gym and cafeteria with the shiny metal decking down. Again, moving around the site, you're looking at it from the side. So you're over on the west, looking towards the east at the project there, and you can see how it drops away to the left. Here you get a pretty good perspective of all the scaffolding and all the work that's going on around the media center and the art and the project room area, as that is the last part of substantial masonry work. They started on the back with the gym, the two-story, worked around to the front, and now they're connecting them with the middle connector between them. You can see from here, looking across the site, you can still see in the background the crane that's beginning to move the last of the steel structure into place for the roofing, and that's the administrative area in the foreground. Looking from the opposite side across the decking, going down over the kindergarten, first grade classroom areas. Again, scaffolding around the media center, and that's going up. It'll look a lot better once the scaffolding is down, but scaffolding is exciting to see, and all the work going on in there. Looking down the main hallway area, you can see the extent of work that's been done, some of the penetrations coming through the walls there as they continue to build vertical to get set for all the steel deliveries, as well as some of the masonry openings in places down the main corridor area. This is looking down at the kindergarten first grade classroom wing, where you can see the exposed steel until that gets closed in with the ceilings, mechanical ductwork, piping, electrical pathways. All that is going on the same time throughout the entire project. This is actually a nighttime shot. Apparently the new iPhone has a nighttime resolution, and so it's not daytime. That is the moon. And so, again, just continuing to do the work required whenever to continue to press this project forward. We're appreciative of all the effort that all crews out there showing us. Mechanical systems and sprinkler systems are going in place everywhere possible. The stairs are finally being installed. That makes it easier for us when we got to the site not to have to traverse ladders all the time, but to go up and down some stairs and move from floor level to floor level. Kind of a neat shot with all the steel and everything before it gets covered. For the mechanical mezzanine area where they're setting all the pads for mechanical units, then they'll start running pipe work suspended from that overhead. View looking across where the outdoor little amphitheater seating will be. One day that will not be a mudslide, that will be an amphitheater setting area. This is completion date of September 17th, and with school projected to open January 1st. They remain on schedule, meaning all critical path milestones are doing very well with that. 51% of the timeline passed, and they're at 41% paid. And the reason for the 10% gap is because this report falls between pay cycles. So they're actually a little closer to that. And we have not used any other contingency or inflation funds remaining from the original awarded contract on this project at this time. Any questions about Southern Pines? Yes. So we're in the two-story wing, and this is towards where the amphitheater would be. So from the second story, this is the middle of the wing. And from the second story, you go down the stairs, straight out that door, and you're entered into where the amphitheater seating area would be.
Or you pull a U-turn to the right and go into the bottom floor of classrooms.
In the bottom hallway, correct. Any other questions? Very good. Northmore High School, the addition and renovation up there. Again, thanks to the construction team up there for having the locker rooms and showers ready for the fall athletic programs in the gym. They did a great job getting to that point, working with the authorities having jurisdiction for occupancy. Here you can see from the bird's eye straight down view, on the far right, that is Building 9, so that's toward the front of the campus. The left would be towards this parking lot in the back of the campus, so you kind of orientate where you're looking here. That yellow you see on the ground is where the auxiliary gym is going to be. So now I'll give you a little more perspective that you can see the elevations of the buildings a little bit. The foundation's all going in place, and the yellow is just the layering that separates for moisture transmission through the concrete, so they're getting ready for concrete pours in this photo of those large areas. You can see here in the foreground, Building 9 to the back left, that's the administration area, and you can see the connector corridor that's beginning to run, connecting the buildings in sequence from the front building, the administration building, to Building 9 to the classroom to the existing gym area. So you can see how that's starting to run across there. Framing going up for the structure down on the back, steel frames right there, and you can see that in the foreground now. And so there'll be a sub, this is between pay cycles, that gap is much closer, and they have not used any contingency or inflation funds remaining. We are out of our unsuitable soil allowance. They discovered some when we pulled the transformer out from where it was in the way. They pulled that out and they found additional soils underneath and around that. And so that depletes the unsuitable soil allowance, but there are other allowances that still remain in the project that can be used. Any questions about Northmore?
I just wanted to ask how the construction was with students and staff being in classes. Have there been any issues, or has it all been fairly seamless?
We have not had any conflicts or issues. It is a very active approach by Principal Purvis and her team. She is involved in every meeting and daily with the contractors on the site for any activities that come up, for noise, to not have any noise generation during certain exam or time periods, as well as any conflict with access for deliveries and things. It's not to say it doesn't go without its ups and downs, but Principal Purvis has been very active, very involved, almost daily out there with the supervisor at the site.
And I think if Jenny were here, she'd be the first one to credit the staff and the students as well. I think it starts with the principal, but it doesn't end there. I think everybody has made their contribution to contributing to a very positive atmosphere while they're undergoing these growing pains.
And I think the, just the excitement of already being able to use the locker rooms, I mean, I think that everybody just can't wait to see the finished product in August, so. But to Dr. Bob's point, Jeannie's leadership has just been tremendous. And then the staff just rallying around her, it's just been awesome.
Any others? Very good. And Pinehurst Elementary. From the groundbreaking ceremony, you got to have the opportunity to see a lot of the work that's been going on out there. A very different looking site than what it used to be. With all the site clearing, the utilities going in place, the final demolition of the classroom auditorium building, and then the erection of the walls around the gymnasium, cafeteria, art, project rooms, beginning to work its way into the foundations of the classroom building. So you're able to get a good feel around the site, and from the perspective that you had out there in that day of some of the tremendous progress that's been made and getting ready for steel fabricators to begin setting beams and joists for roof structures. Excuse me. So from here you can see, looking across from the project art rooms, media center in the foreground, and the cafeteria and gymnasium in the background with the tall walls. From a different perspective, from the left looking at the same area. Different scaffolding. It's a rising scaffold as opposed to the traditional stacked buck system here that they opted to use for. In this case, they believed it would give them more speed on construction of those tall walls. So a wonderful system that they brought out and put into place. That helped them get to the points where they needed to get to the bearing elevations. The project duration is to be completed March 8th of 2021. Demolition is completed now of the auditorium and the classroom buildings. Geothermal activities for heating and cooling system continue out there. The foundations of the classroom wing are well underway in the front of the building, and site utilities, connections to water and sewer in the streets is continuing out there. Currently, they're 27% of the timeline. You'll see 11% paid, and again, it's only because this report has fallen right between a pay cycle, so they're much closer than that. We are still trying to get a final assessment on the impact to the schedule that the abatement of the buildings had out there with the contractor. We are working with them to finalize, and by next month's update, I'll have any impacts that brings to update the board with. Again, right now, the project remains without touching any of the contingency or inflation funds that were not already used to award the contract. Any questions about Pinehurst?
I have a similar one to the one I just asked about Northmore. This is an active community, obviously. There's a lot of homes and homeowners nearby and a church. What kind of dialogue is the construction company or the schools having with the community just about construction timelines and impact on commutes and all that good stuff?
Great question. The village has done a very good job working with us and getting messaging out to the residents around there about any activities or things that are coming up with the project, especially any road closures that have to happen to make utility tie-ins. Contractors have been working closely to make sure there's plenty of advance notice of any temporary road closures so people can be alerted and alter their travel pattern for that day or days. There's been a resident who expressed concern with some of the vibration and shaking that went on. The contractor has been visiting with them to document any issues they have or concerns with their house and to continue to monitor that. Outside that, we haven't had any neighbors come out and complain to date with anything, but it's early.
Well, we also have
Happens later.
we also have neighbors who've been complimentary.
Yes, we do.
And the Mayor Pro Tem in particular was very expressive in her excitement about what's happening and looking forward to having the children return.
I have to say, it's impressive to drive by and see how coordinated the efforts are at that job site with backhoes going, knocking down buildings over here and sorting the rubble and other buildings beginning to rise at the same time. It was amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed the groundbreaking.
But
The kids did too.
but
They were super happy.
it's going to get even more crowded out there very soon.
Any questions for Mr. Barath?
And then the last thing is, again, I already mentioned this about McDeeds Creek. We continue to work with the contractor through this as well as legal counsel with getting this wrapped up and finalized. And hopefully, again, in another month, I'll be able to bring a different update to the board.
I will add that there were a number of things the contractor could not get to until the spring, and so we've been patient with that. There have been some things that could have been done over the winter that didn't get done. So now the spring is here. If they were waiting for that to wait till spring, we'll give them that opportunity. But we are taking it very seriously, and we will not allocate another dime of taxpayer dollars. Fortunately, the kinds of things that Mr. Barath and I worry about are not the kinds of things that are very disruptive to operations. But they are things that that are part of our standard for our due diligence in our management of this situation. And so we're working with the contractor and our legal counsel to make sure that it's done right before they get paid. And so you have our commitment to continue with that effort.
I was at Pinecrest last week, and this is a different construction, but I must say I was most impressed to see the field house at Pinecrest High School reconfigured to become a girls' locker room. And I know that was a project not through this construction bond, but through the PAC program with the Pinecrest Parent Booster Club, excuse me, raising the money. And it was most impressive to see how they have about finished that one up, and the girls are already using it.
Absolutely.
I would just like to make a comment, John, compliments to you and everybody involved. Handling this many projects, I know is difficult, so appreciate it very much.
Happy to do it.
Madam Chair, if I could add, relative to the point that you made, also we are complimentary to Mr. Hewitt, Ms. Phillips, and the members of the PAC for their approach. Very thoughtful. They involved John early and often, and looked carefully at the master plan for Pinecrest High School. and came up with a project that really worked within the integrity of the master plan, but at the same time helped them achieve their goals. And so our hats go off to them for a job well done.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for Mr. Brath? Okay, Madam Chair, if you'll permit Mr. Cox and I to get situated, we'll manage item 5B.
Excuse me.
As is our tradition, Madam Chair, at the work session in March, the superintendent presents the proposed 2020, fiscal year 2020-21 budget. And as I have introduced each budget during my 6 years here, we begin with our vision statement. Moore County Schools will ensure that educational experiences inspire students to reach their full potential and lead productive lives in an ever-changing world. And our mission, which is Moore County Schools creates a supportive, engaging, and safe learning environment that builds knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for future success. We are mindful of our core beliefs, that we believe successful schools are essential for thriving communities, and that every student can learn and succeed regardless of their socioeconomic status, race, and ethnicity. That all staff are empowered to meet the diverse learning needs for our students. That resources are provided so students and staff of all backgrounds and abilities can be successful. That students should come to school and feel safe, secure, and cared for. That we are a partnership with students, parents, and the community. And finally, that we're accountable for the education of our students. As I've said before, the budget is nothing more than the monetary expression of the vision, the mission, and the core beliefs. And I invite you to evaluate the budget that we're going to present at this time in that context. It begins with the summary of our identified needs, and as a segue to Mr. Cox, who I'll defer to for the bulk of our presentation, and I'll add in from time to time, but he'll manage most of it this year. Last month, Mr. Cox provided you with a detailed presentation of our needs. That was not the budget. A month ago was a presentation of our priority needs. This chart summarizes those needs and focuses only on next year. So as a board, you have already evaluated what our needs are over the next 5 years, and you've evaluated the totality of those needs in the context of your vision, mission, and core beliefs. So in the past, we have repeated that, but we're not doing that this year. We're going to simply refresh your memory that we did involve your engagement with those needs last month. Start with this summary of what that total value was of those needs, and then we're going to take a little bit different approach this year to how we have framed the budget. And I think Mr. Cox is going to do a very good job of explaining how we lay that out. So at this time, Andrew Cox.
Thank you, Dr. Grimsey, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you see here, just as a reminder, the identified needs that we presented last month to you broken down by strategic plan domain. As you see, Domain 1, academic achievement. Domain 2, student safety, health, and welfare. Domain 3, employee culture and capacity. Domain 4, parent and community engagement. And Domain 5, organizational capacity and efficiency. Between those 5 domains, we have a total need of $3.9 million, $3,957,500. And again, these are needs, these are not proposed budget. These are the needs that we identified for next year. What we have done, we have further broken down those needs into fixed cost and other identified cost needs. So first, I'd like to walk through the fixed cost items, and just as a reminder what a fixed cost is, there are things that either have to happen through a mandate from the state, something written in general statute that has to happen, or an item that is a directive or something that the board would like for us to put in or into the budget. So the first item you see here is add 6 teachers for the K-3 class size reduction mandate from the state. We actually need 13 teachers for this. However, based on ADM projections, we anticipate the state to give us 7 of those teachers, which leave the remaining 6 teachers that we need from local funds to be able to meet the state mandate to be in compliance with class size for kindergarten through 3rd grade. You see there $70,000, 6 teachers at $70,000. You may say, well, $70,000 is not what a teacher gets. You're correct. What this includes is it includes the salary of the teacher, the FICA, retirement, hospitalization, and any other benefits associated with what the employer has to pay for that employee. So that's where we come up with the $70,000, which is essentially the same dollar amount that the state gives us for a state allotted teacher.
And if I might, Mr. Cox, board members, you'll recall that in the past, we've used $60,000 as the fully loaded cost for each full-time equivalent teaching position. One of the benefits we have with Mr. Cox joining us with his many years of experience at NCDPI has been that he knows that the state uses $70,000. We probably should have been using $70,000 all along. This is a true cost comparison compared to what we have used in the past. So this is not a decision that we've made arbitrarily, but rather one that aligns our budgeting practices with the state's actual allocation of dollars.
Andrew, I had a question on the charter school thing. I know this figure is different than the one that we had seen previously. How do you take like the 150 students and divide it into that amount of money?
Let's go ahead and let him introduce that line.
Okay.
He might answer your
Okay,
question,
great.
Mr. Dennison. If not, we'll refine it.
Yep, so the next item is the charter school increase of an estimated 150 students. We're anticipating enrollments at the charter school to increase next year, 150 students. By general statute, we are required to pay the charter school, each charter school, a per pupil share of the amount of money that the county gives us. And to answer your question, Mr. Dennison, we do take the total number of students for Moore County, which include Moore County public schools, each student that is in the charter school, and any charter school that the student will reside in Moore County. The charter school does not have to be in Moore County, but as long as that student resides in Moore County and is eligible to attend Moore County schools, that is factored into the total number. We then take that and divide by the money that the county gives us to come up with that per pupil amount.
Okay.
And so at the number that we're going to recommend for budgeting purposes, that 150 students would equate to additional $550,000 to the charter schools next year. And that's just the additional monies. We're estimating, as you'll see later in the presentation, the total amount that we will be paying to the charter schools in 2021 will be about $2.8 million.
Thanks.
The next line item you see is the state salary increase for locally paid employees. As you're aware, we have quite a few locally paid employees. When the state gives a raise in the budget, we also give that same type of raise and benefit increase to our locally paid employees. Next year, or this year, is actually an election year, and based on history, we have seen that during election years, raises for teachers and classified staff have typically been a little bit higher than non-election years. Without a budget being passed and a raise for certified staff or classified staff this year, we're anticipating a little higher percentage. We're estimating 6% for certified and 2% for classified. And that is a cost of $660,000 for our locally paid employees. The next item you'll see there is the local supplement increases for our certified staff. We have a local salary schedule that gives a supplement to our certified staff. What this does, it allows us to increase a step on that supplement scale for those certified employees each year at a cost of $300,000. The next item you see there is adding one teacher for orchestra in the Northmore area. Based on feedback that the board received from the community during the student reassignment plan, to maintain continuity among curriculums, students that may be transferring to Northmore where they were currently in a orchestra program now wouldn't have it going to Northmore. So the board asked us to put that item back into the budget to have orchestra program for the Northmore area. And for one teacher for that would be a $70,000 cost. And then the last item for the fixed cost items is the school business system modernization mandate. The state has mandated that all LEAs, all school districts, implement new financial and human resources systems, and they have gone through an RFP process and identified 2 vendors that we can choose from. That will take place over several years. However, our current vendor for the current system that we have saw the price of the new modern systems and has increased their price to match those modern systems for our current system that we have. And so that cost is going to be increasing starting July 1 without that system being a modern system, which they call it the modernization project. So that is a fixed cost that is going to happen regardless. And all these are annual costs. So when you see there, you have fixed cost total of $2,050,000.
Any questions, board members, on the fixed cost increases?
Is the modernization mandate, is that 50,000 standard for every school system, or is that a prorated amount based on tiers, or?
So each vendor chooses how they charge. Our current vendor is implementing the same scale that the new vendors are, which is a cost per ADM. Their previous structure was not set as a cost per ADM, it was just a straight dollar amount. And so when these new vendors that have the modern systems came out and did a cost per ADM projection or structure, they implemented that, which raised our cost by $50,000. So it'll vary between LEA based on the ADM that they have.
Now, will we see another increase the next year, or is this a one-time, and we'll continue to pay
So
at
it
that
should increase
level?
50,000 this year, and it should maintain that. We may see a slight increase from year to year, but that's with the ADM increasing. But it won't be a large increase to this level next year.
Mr. Cox, will it be fair to say that once we're clear as to the program that we're going to implement, that we'll enter into like a 3-year contract with an annual rate that the board would approve, that since it would exceed 50,000?
Yes, that is correct. We would enter into a contract. And as part of the RFP process that the state signed with the 2 vendors, the price is going to be set for 5 years. It can't raise for 5 years. And then I don't remember what the percentage is, but it can only increase a certain percent for the next over the next 5 years. So they put some parameters in place so the cost wouldn't rise significantly after we go onto one of those 2 platforms.
So is the state paying for this, or are we paying for this?
So the state will pay for the migration of us to move to the new system. And they will, well, I say that, they're supposed to pay for us to migrate, and they're supposed to pay for the first year of the maintenance fee. However, right now, with the budget not being passed, no additional dollars were allocated to this project. So only the pilots that have selected that are in the process of going forward right now are able to move forward. However, that does not change this $50,000. Our current company has said that's our price, and nothing's going to change that.
In order for them to accommodate their requirements under the modernization plan?
Well, they're not part of the modernization plan.
Okay. Right. So while we wait, this is our price?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Right.
And once the plan is implemented, is there any chance that that price would go down if we switched vendors?
No, because this is the price. They've changed the price structure of the lowest price of the 2 vendors that we have to choose from.
Very good. Everybody understand that? Mm-hmm. It's an offer we can't refuse.
And I will say, they have come out with a couple, our current vendor has come out with a couple of plans. I don't know the details of it yet, but if we sign a 3 or 5 year agreement, it may drop a few $1,000s, but it will not drop significantly. I mean, like I said, I don't know the detail of those plans yet. I need to look into those.
As we transition to the next slide, board members, I'll emphasize that what we are presenting to you on this slide is that you have a fixed cost increase of $2.05 million. Now, there could be some variability on the salary line. It could go down, it could go up. Remember that our state legislators and our governor know that our teachers have gone an entire year with no raise. And it's an election year. So I think Mr. Cox has been reasonable in projecting that the likelihood is that there will be a raise and that it will be on the higher end compared to what we've seen in recent years. So we've got to be proactive about this. There will be plenty of other important needs that can be met after fixed cost increases. So if it's not quite this high, I would encourage you to consider a budget that keeps this amount as a fixed cost increase. If it ends up being a little rich, then you've got some extra money available then to maybe add a couple of teachers later on. You'll see that we're not going to be proposing enough money to put enough teachers back into this budget. But by no means are we recommending that we just wait until the state budget is approved and maybe go back to the county commissioners in the summer or the fall to ask and find out at that point if we have enough money to pay our locally funded teachers. I think that this is an amount of money that needs to be a fixed cost, even though later on there'll be some discussion and we'll have to confess that it's not locked in the way that other fixed costs are, but surely we would be irresponsible if we didn't plan for a salary increase of this nature from the state in the coming fiscal year. Any questions about the fixed cost projected budget? Okay.
All right, so the second breakdown category is other identified needs. First line item you see there, which we all know is important to all of us here, is to implement the classified salary schedule that was proposed last year. You heard from teachers and classified staff last month on the importance, and it's one of your legislative priorities. That's a cost of $850,000. The next item we have here is restore teachers for grades 4 and 5, which classes increased, as you heard Dr. Locklear present, I believe it was last month. Those class sizes in grades 4 through 5 have increased as a result of lower class sizes in K through 3 from the class size reduction mandate. So here you see one teacher at $70,000. And you may ask why there's different color here, and I'll get to that in a minute. I won't go into that just yet. The third item is maintain bridge funded positions. We have 5 nurses, 2 counselors, and 1 psychologist currently paid out of Medicaid funding and impact aid funding. The Medicaid funding, we were asked to transition that to spend down some of the fund balance that we had from Medicaid reimbursements from the county. So we did that. Next year, we will be out of that money and we will be no longer be able to support those 5 nurses, 2 counselors, and 1 psychologist from that bridge funding, the gap funding, if you want to say. So this year, we're asking for half of that funding to start getting us there so we won't have to ask for the full amount next year. That's a cost of $237,500. The next item is to restore teachers again for grades 4 through 5, and that's 7 teachers at $70,000. That's a repeat of that second line item, which was 1 teacher, and I'll tell you why on the next slide when we get there. That's additional cost of $490,000.
Let me just clarify. We'll explain why we separated the 2 lines.
Yes.
On the next slide.
We'll explain the red and why we separated the 2 lines on the next slide. Yes, sir. The next item you see here is Add Director for Operations and Human Resources. It's not really adding a position. That position is there. It's a request to add funding for that position. As Mr. Dennison mentioned, Mr. Brath has done a really good job with managing the 5 major construction projects that we have going on right now. That has pretty much taken all his time, so he has needed some support to manage the operations of the district. So we have someone in doing that currently, and this is to provide funding for that position to maintain that, especially as long as these construction projects are ongoing, where we need additional support in the operations area, which will then transition over to support our HR area. We have increasing need for additional technology support. As you know, we have Chromebooks, laptops, in quite a few classrooms. And this is to increase the IT technician support for current operational demand. We have technicians that travel, and sometimes they can't respond as quickly as the schools would like. So adding another would help increase that operational demand or the service time that they have there at a cost of $60,000. A couple years ago, our diffs were cut. This is a request to restore one diff that was cut in a prior year at a cost of $65,000.
And for the record, DIF is
A district instructional facilitator.
digital.
Digital, sorry, yes, sorry.
Digital integration.
Sorry,
Digital integration.
facilitator. I got a facilitator.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Right. All right. And then the last item is a lot similar to the IT technician. It's actually IT media and tech assistant support. Was increasing by 1 FT at a cost of $35,000. Again, just make note that these costs do include the benefits that go along with the salaries there. So it's not the salary, specific salary for an individual there. The total running cost of the identified needs is $1,907,500.
And Mr. Cox, if you add $1,907,500 to $2,050,000 in fixed costs, that equals the identified needs that were presented on your very first slide. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so these 2 slides, these second 2 slides, provide you with a detailed breakout based on fixed costs and other needs. Any questions so far, board members?
I just had one observation. The only thing that I see different than last year is the orchestra teacher and the business system modernization. So our needs have not gone away from what we identified last year, that we were not able to meet.
Thank you, Ms. Wallen-Miller. Very good observation. What is clear is that the only new initiative that's represented here is bringing the Northmore schools back into equity in terms of the offering of orchestra, which was cut a few years ago when the number of students in Northmore dropped to a certain level. But now that new students are coming, the board has correctly directed the staff to include this in the budget. But even that does nothing more than bring us up to a base level of operations. There's nothing new here. There's no new money. This is the same money. There is no new money. It is the same money for current costs. If we don't meet these needs, then we drop below the expectations articulated in our mission, vision, and core beliefs.
Any other questions? So as we start transitioning to the proposed budget, you'll see here the summary of the recurring cost, as Dr. Grimsey mentioned, $2,050,000 in fixed costs. Other identified needs is $1,907,500 for a total identified need of $3,957,500. What we are estimating is county funding for current expense, and we'll get to how we determine that amount.
But you now know what the red is.
And I'll get to that, yeah. That's what, yeah, so that's, yeah, so you know what the red is. So, yeah, so estimated county funding is $2,976,382. So you have a shortfall of $981,118, which make up that $3,957,500. So as he said, That's what's in the red. The 981,000 make up the red from that previous slide. So those are things that we do not feel, we're not proposing to include in the budget based on the number that we feel is appropriate, reasonable request to the commissioners.
So to make it clear,
Well, not to the
the
commissioners, to the board.
superintendent's proposed budget falls short of what the need is that's been identified by the board previously. So should there be criticism of that, that would be fair criticism. But there are reasons why Mr. Cox and I have decided to opt for a request that is below what our identified needs are. Mr. Cox.
So as you see here, here is a chart that breaks it down. It shows your identified needs of $3,957,500. On the left there, you see the estimated county funding of $2,976,382. So how do we come up with that estimated amount? In January, the county manager presented his projection for property tax increase, which was between 2 and 2.5% over the current budgeted amount.
Let me correct that. Property tax revenue increase. He did not propose property tax increase, but rather property
Yes.
tax revenue.
Thank you for the
Same tax
clarification.
rates, but a higher yield of revenue.
Yes, thank you for the clarification, yes. So he projected property tax revenues to increase by 2 to 2.5%. We have taken the lower amount, 2%, for part of this projection. He did not provide a projected increase in sales tax revenues. However, we've looked back at history over the last few years. We've talked with staff at the county, and we feel that 2% is a reasonable amount to project on increased sales tax revenues based on their historical increase in budgeted revenues for sales tax. So when you add the 2% of property tax revenue increase, the 2% for sales tax revenue increase, we come up with the $2,976,382 over prior budgeted amounts. So when you look at it, you see our fixed costs again of $2,050,000. To stay within that $2,976,000, we'll only be able to do $926,000 of that $1.9 million other identified needs. So you see that shortfall of $981,000. And again, I didn't mention this, that $2,976,382 is based on a resolution that the county passed in 2016 to give the school system 40% of their budgeted property tax and sales tax revenues.
So the $2,976,382 does not represent all of the anticipated sales and property tax revenues for next year, but rather 40% of that. So we took the county's conservative estimates on sales and property tax growth, 2% each, and took 40% of that amount, which is the county's budget policy for allocation of revenues to the schools, and from that derived an amount that we used for budget purposes that would limit what our request would be. We self-governed on that. We chose to restrict what we're proposing to you to $2,976,382, which is admittedly $981,118,000 short of what our identified needs are. Any questions about that so far?
So we're holding them to the 40% resolution that we should be getting, no matter, anyhow, because they made it a resolution, correct?
Well, we're not suggesting that we're holding them, we needed a number. We needed a reasonable number by which to estimate. Their policy says 40%. Their policy allows for them to vote to waive that policy, and they have done that. In a couple of years, they have waived it and given us more than 40%. In each of those years, that was temporary funding, though. It was never reoccurring funding. And as Mr. Cox will show, that in those years where they exceeded the cap, then they reduced that in subsequent years, and we'll show you that. Last year, they waived the 40% policy and allocated 37.5%. Mr. Cox will also show that. So we're not presupposing anything. We just simply need reasonable standards. And so county staff has indicated that they feel as though it's reasonable that we operate with the most modest estimate, which is 2% growth in sales and property taxes. And beyond that, we just simply applied the county's own policy with the hope that at minimum, they would hold to the 40% and perhaps not disappoint us and consider increasing that. But right now, we needed a rule to play by. And so in proposing the budget, we want you to understand what it was that was the basis of our estimate. And this is different than anything we've done before, so we understand the questions.
So basically, we are trying to provide a budget that we feel will get approved within our 40% threshold. And that does not include our items that we need to really support our school operations, which were all of the items that were shown in the red on our previous page. So we're talking about losing our nurses, we're talking about losing our extra teachers. Again, we don't have them, but we're not even going to ask for them. And all of our other positions that we heard last month from our team, that those things were desperately needed. And so we are, and I know I'm, I mean, it's just a hard pill to swallow.
Well, it does illustrate the staff's efforts to to impose within ourselves reasonable guidelines. But let me just make sure, for the record, we clarify. We are not suggesting that this year we will be cutting nurses and a psychologist or counselors this year. There is adequate funding in the Medicaid reimbursement fund balance to cover fiscal year 2021. What Mr. Cox is saying is that this time next year, we'll need twice that amount to save those positions.
Right.
And given the challenge of expanding our local funding from year to year, if it's difficult to put $237,000 into the budget, it will be doubly difficult, particularly if we're held to a 40% cap, to get over $500,000 for that purpose. So if we begin to build up our reoccurring spending now, we can have it. So you are correct, Ms. Thompson, in the long run. We would lose those positions in next year's budget presentation, but not this year. So Mr. Cox and I feel as though we can live with not doing that this year, as long as this time next year, if the same parameters are in place,
40%.
Then perhaps we could do it. But we won't know that. But we have made some very difficult decisions in presenting this budget to you this year. We have made difficult decisions when we've presented this budget. Have we been too strict? Well, you're going to find out from the public when it speaks to you at your public hearing next week, or you as board members can stand in judgment. Today's presentation, though, we want to make clear to you on what basis did we make those decisions, and then we'll humbly accept your judgment as to whether or not we did that appropriately.
I understand the self-policing ourselves, but just looking at the list of things that are left in red and knowing of things that are not even on the list, red or black, such as additional teachers in our 6th through 12th grade area, which is where classes are grossly overcrowded. It's really hard to not want to go ahead and put a few more things on this list so we can show how nicely we're self-policing by not asking for too much. But our classrooms deserve the attention. They deserve the extra teachers going in, and it's truly bothersome to realize that we're not even asking for any more. And of course, we want everyone that could be possibly funded. to help with these class sizes.
Mr. Cox and I will gladly salute and accept any directive from the county commissioners and the school board to do otherwise. But we had to make a very difficult choice between our continually increasing pupil-teacher ratios in grades 6 through 12 and classified employees, some of whom are not even earning subsistence wage. And we don't take pleasure in being put in that position. But unfortunately, if these will be the parameters within which we have to live, then we think we ethically must try to get our classified employees, our loyal and dedicated and capable classified employees, up to at least subsistence wage. And then, hopefully, if we can maintain 40% of the full growth rates every year, then in time we can start getting additional locally funded full-time equivalent teachers back into the budget. We won't be able to solve that all in 1 year. We'd like to chip away at it, and you can see the last dollars that we recommended here, the last $70,000 that we recommended was just that. One of those eight.
One of the 8.
One of the 8 teachers for grades 4 and 5. If you recall Tim Locklear's presentation on staffing that he gave previously, in order to get back to 2016 in grade pupil-teacher ratios, 2016 pupil-teacher ratios in grades 4 through 12, and Tim, I'm going to let you correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we need 21, total of 21 full-time equivalent positions.
That's from the presentation from
Right,
last year.
that's correct. And so we need 21, and he wanted to target the first 8. His recommendation was to target the first 8 at our youngest students and then build up from there. So we know we need 21 to get back to our 2016 level. We're willing to go with 8, but even within there, we are restricting ourselves. We are being disciplined in sticking to the county's own parameters. 2% projections on revenue growth, policy which states a limitation, a cap of 40% to the schools. Willing to do more than that, but we are respecting the county commissioners and the county staff's projections and their policy and staying within those parameters. And we'll leave that with you all to judge.
Well, even if we went back to the 2016 ratios, or the 2016 number of teachers, that does not reduce our class sizes overwhelmingly, because we've gained students. Our ADM is higher now than it was in 2016.
But
so-
actually, Madam Chair, if I might, 21 would allow for the growth since that time. If I remember Tim's presentation correctly, it would allow for that, that we have, because we actually didn't cut that many in 2016. So that's a number, it's a little bit higher than what we cut at that time. Is that reasonable?
It was based on, that was a presentation done in January 2019. 21, and that was based on bringing it down to the ratios that we funded teachers on in 2016.
So I hope everybody was able to hear that in the microphone, but Dr. Locklear said that was a 2019 presentation. So it may be a little bit low, but it is a big number. I can be accused of being conservative on this, but nevertheless, it's a number that's beyond what Mr. Cox and I were able to figure out how to put in this jigsaw puzzle called the proposed superintendent's budget.
Well, and of note, based on what we heard from our teaching, the advisory committees, the teacher, the support personnel, everybody wants the certified staff, or classified staff, excuse me, to experience growth in their reimbursement. And I think teachers are willing to stay in the classroom with larger class sizes if that will make it happen.
We have to remember too, now the General Assembly is statutorily responsible for paying for our teachers, and they're not doing it.
True.
That's the problem.
And that is why it's on our legislative agenda.
Again, these are local costs. This is the cost for the locally funded positions under the current state allotment formula, which is all the staff is authorized to do. Shall we continue, Madam Chair?
Certainly.
Mr. Cox.
The rest of the bad news.
So the actual budget request here, this is just a similar chart to the one before, shows what we will be able to cover, which is the fixed costs, and we'll be able to implement the classified salary schedule in one of those 8 teachers. That's why there were 2 categories of teachers are going back in grades 4 or 5 for class size, because we weren't able to do 8, we were able to do 1 of the 8, along with the classified salary schedule, to get the difference between the fixed cost of $2 million and the $2,976,000 that we're projecting from the county revenues. Again, this is just to be respectful of the county commissioners, their 40% resolution, the commitment to us, trying to keep our requests within that amount. So what you see here is historical funding from the county over the last few years. When they passed the resolution back in 2016, you see they gave us the 40%, as Dr. Grimacy has already mentioned. A couple years they gave us more than 40%, which was one-time funding, which we did not retain. And this current year, you see we were funded at 37.5% of budgeted sales tax and property tax revenues. You see for the 2021 school year, we're requesting that 40% of anticipated property tax and sales tax revenues, which bring the total county request to $35,565,515. Of that, $34 million would be for operations, and I'll go into that a little more. $750,000 for digital learning and $750,000 for capital, as indicated there in the note. So how that allotment from the county would be broken out, which is kind of what I just mentioned a little bit ago, or local expense for Moore County schools, money that Moore County schools would be able to use, would be $31,265,515. That's part of the $34 million I mentioned just a minute ago on the previous slide. Of that $34 million, $2.8 million of that local expense will go to the charter schools. And then, as I said before, $750,000 to capital outlay and $750,000 to our digital learning fund that you heard a little bit about earlier, for a total request of $35,565,515. Fund 2 also has a little additional money, or we have a little additional revenue there. As you see, the county appropriation, which includes that $2.8 million for charter schools, is $34,065,515. We also get fines and forfeitures from the county judicial system, which we anticipate around $450,000, and we also earn interest on monies that we have for $30,000, which make up a total local fund, or Fund 2, as we refer to as local fund, budget of $34,545,515. So this is the total proposed, the superintendent's proposed request budget for Moore County schools. You see anticipated state funding is $81,500,000. We just went over the local fund of $34,545,515. Federal fund, which is our Fund 3, at $7.2 million. Our capital expense at $750,000 in Fund 4. Our school nutrition of $5,485,000, and then our local operations are Fund 8 at $3 million, which is a total proposed budget of $132,480,515.
Before we progress, sir, just where is digital among the funds?
Digital is not shown here because that is a separate fund that the county maintains. And we submit that to the county, and they pay that themselves. So it's not shown here in this request.
And clarify one more time for the record, Fund 8.
Fund 8 are things that, special grants that we get that we apply for individually, or programs that we have that a charter school may not have, such as ROTC. It also includes our Medicaid reimbursements. Our impact aid for our military families and things like that.
They're based only on the numbers of our own children or our own military-connected children, for our own children that are Medicaid eligible.
Correct,
There are no
yes.
charter school children included in those reimbursements. If they want those reimbursements, they have to come up with their own means by which to recapture, which they are eligible to do.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cox, I just caught this, and maybe I'm missing something. In slide 11, where you have the proposed 2021 county allotment, the total is $35,565,515. And then the proposed revenue on slide 12 is $34 million. So that means that, where's that $1 million?
So that is the $1 million, it's actually 1.5 million.
Okay.
750,000 for the
okay.
digital fund.
Gotcha.
And 750,000 that will go in Fund 4, not Fund 2,
Okay.
for capital outlay.
Thank you. I knew something was missing somewhere, and I just didn't get.
So, with the proposed budget, some of the shortcomings, some of the things we will not be able to accomplish. This proposed budget fails to reduce class sizes in grades 4 through 12. As you mentioned, we're not able to put those teachers back in those grades. It fails to move counselors, nurses, and psychologists from bridge funding that, as we mentioned, will require future cuts if they're not funding. It fails to provide adequate tech support that we need for our schools in our district. And it also fails to provide funding for the operations and HR director position.
And that represents a gamble on our part. Our hope is that by the end of the year, there'll be a variety of funds throughout the budget from which we can cobble together enough funds to pay for that position, and any shortcomings that we have would have to come from our cash balance, which isn't intended to support purposes of that nature. And so you all know enough about the cash balance to understand that when we get to that point, the engine is burning red hot. You know, we really can't drop below that point. But this position is so necessary right now while we're building these schools. And in the future, for this school district's capacity to be able to recruit and retain employees, with 1,800 employees, you had a study that was 6 years ago that told you that we were understaffed in the administrative support we had for 1,800 employees' basic personnel needs. So it's our desire that as Mr. Booth's role in supporting Mr. Brath during construction begins to wane, assuming there aren't any more major construction projects after Pinehurst Elementary, we're hoping to transition that position over to HR, where we will have some federal funds that we can use, reduce the cost of that position, but also add value to this school district's ability to support 1,800 employees. And so that's why that position, I want to make sure that nobody thinks that this is an additional cost. This is a position that we absolutely need. This has been acknowledged, that the amount of work we're doing, the fact that we did not go out and hire additional staff like other entities have when they've had much less construction, they've added more staff than we have. We tried that, and we recognized last year we couldn't do that. Mr. Bowie was available because we were consolidating the schools, and it was a perfect time that he was available. So I don't mind saying this is exactly what this position is about, and is one that we just cannot take lightly. Given all the other major needs we have, we can't take this one lightly simply because it's a district-level position. Mr. Cox.
So on the positive, what the budget will be able to accomplish, we will be able to implement the classified salary schedule to bring up the classified staff closer to a living wage. It does provide funding to maintain current operations and current services, which are our fixed costs that we showed. And based on the county's 40% resolution and their projections, it will not require a tax increase by the county commissioners.
We have restricted ourselves to revenue growth based on the existing tax rates. And so it is our effort, it has been our intention to put forth to you a request that under no circumstances puts any pressure on the county to raise taxes. That's been our intention. It remains to be evaluated by the county staff and by the county commissioners, and we respect their judgment, but we have been diligent in attempting to stay within that parameter.
You know, I would almost add one more accomplishment to this, in that we did not appropriate any funds from fund balance onto this budget. I don't know, I mean, I know when we all started in 2015, 2016, we appropriated, you know, over $3 million, wasn't it about $3.5 million out of our fund balance to be able to pay for regular operations. And the fact that we've been able to reduce our budget over the past 5 years, I think is something that's important, that we're no longer going for our fund balance. We've done that by getting rid of the old year-round. We have eliminated 15 positions. We no longer have Spanish immersions. There have been some cuts that we have taken over the past 5 years to come to a position where we're no longer borrowing or taking from our fund balance. And it is an accomplishment, even though it's not one that we send up the balloons for. But I think it's important that we recognize that we have a balanced budget, and that this is one that is based on what we know we can spend. So I would just add that to a list of accomplishments.
My comment, I think we have to be careful when we talk about fund balance. I mean, we were really going to keep $2 million because of the way we were paid on things.
Well, this is an appropriated fund balance. That's different. The $2 million is not appropriated.
Well,
It is
they-
kept in abeyance,
they look at
right? But
fund
we
balance.
physically appropriated money into
Oh, yeah.
operations, daily operations.
fund balance.
When we started on this board 5 years ago, and I just, you know, and that was because of the state, because of the recession, you know, that was the way the funding was, and the state funding levels never came up to where we had expected them to be. So I just think that's, you know, again, it's an accomplishment. It's not one to send the parade in, but
Yeah.
it is important to note the work that we have done up to now to reduce so that we have a balanced budget.
So what are the next steps? On March 9th, at Carthage Elementary, there'll be a public hearing where the public can give feedback to the board based on the superintendent's proposed budget. That's at 6:30. On April 13th, based on the feedback from that public hearing, you will adopt your budget. We'll take the feedback that you give us. We'll refine anything in this budget that you would like for us to refine, and then you'll take action on that budget to adopt your budget on April 13th. This is the superintendent's budget, then you'll adopt yours on April 13th. On April 15th or April 20th, the commissioners have not given us a firm date. They're two tentative dates. One of the two dates, we will present your budget to the county commissioners. One of those two dates. On May 5th, the county manager will present his recommended budget to the county commissioners, similar to what we're doing today with Dr. Grimacy presenting his proposed budget to you guys. And then on May 19th, they plan to hold a public hearing on the county manager's proposed budget to the commissioners, which is different than different than last year, where they did everything, public hearing and approved the budget in late June. So on June 2nd or the 16th, again, these are tentative, they haven't confirmed which one it will be at this point. That's when the county commissioners will take action and approve their budget. So after the after the May 5th date, we will have a better idea of knowing what the county manager will recommend funding levels that we'll have to be able to plan for accordingly.
Madam Chairman, in closing, I want to affirm Mr. Cox and I are together on what we perceive as the shortcomings and accomplishments of this budget, with an asterisk on behalf of Ms. Wallen-Miller. I'm still wondering if it's an accomplishment or a basic standard that we should meet. We don't use fund balance, but I appreciate her remarks. I want to make sure that we understand that if we do not get $2.05 million to cover our fixed costs, we will be back with you with cost reductions, that we will be actually cutting cost. We will remind you that 85% of your current budget right now is in personnel, and it is nearly impossible to cut this budget without cutting personnel in the event that we have $2.05 million in fixed costs that are not covered by some revenue source. And so on that somber note, we'll go to the last slide and invite any questions or feedback that the board would like to offer going into next week's budget hearing.
We have a technology, what you said, we have a technology account separate from our main account, correct? Is that kind of how?
The county has a digital fund, $750,000.
Okay, is there, and I know we've talked about this tons of times, and I probably bring it up too much too, but if we had a separate account for charter schools, how much would that save us for our money?
It wouldn't save us anything. One way or another, the $2.8 million goes to the charters.
I'm talking about local funds, because.
That's
there's-
correct. This is all local expense. Actually, the price tag for running the charters is much higher, much greater than $2.8 million. $2.8 million is what must be shown in our budget. In the past, when we have offered to set up a separate charter school fund, our intention with that was merely transparency. At no time have we ever thought we would save money that way unless the county commissioners funded that separately. So if they took on the cost of the $2.8 million in its entirety, then that would be an additional $2.8 million that we would have available for our students. But to set up a separate fund without adding any money to it, it doesn't matter whether it's on our books or on the county's books. We just have attempted over time to recognize the fact that there are means by which the responsibility that we have to pass on the local expense per pupil to the charters has the effect of pulling money away from what we pay our students. And we have sought for years to get the county to fund the charters separately. So, Ms. Caldwell, to answer, there's two ways to answer your question. If there was a separate fund set up for the local expense per child for charters, and there was an additional $2.8 million put into that fund, then that money would go to the charters, and we'd hold on to the $2.8 million per year, and then that way, we would have our money without the charters losing anything. But right now, to set up a separate fund, all it would do is move the money from our books to the county's books.
But aren't we losing money when there's kids that aren't even coming into our county? Into our schools?
We've shown that in the past. And we do, in effect, what ends up happening is that the money follows the children, but we've shown in great detail in previous presentations how that has an effect when our numbers are growing and we don't have a decline. All right, so our numbers grow, we're not getting that amount per pupil. The charters need their money.
Right,
They
and
have
I
to pay
agree with that.
teachers, they've got to have supplies, they've got to pay their utility bills. Nobody has ever, neither I or any member of this staff has ever suggested that we take money away from the charters.
Right.
We still adhere to the fact, though, as we have shown time and time and time again, that the method of funding as it now stands actually creates a situation where we end up losing money that we need for our existing children. And without repeating the whole presentation, that's the case. But I want to discriminate that between the fact that it's not just a matter of whose books it's on.
Right.
That doesn't change the formula one way or another, okay?
I would just be happy if they would take the charter school funds out of the 40% they're giving us. In other words, we get our 40% and whatever charter school is goes on top of that.
That would be an option that would benefit us without hurting the charters.
Right.
In fact, it would benefit the charters because if that were done, then that would increase the
Right.
local expense per pupil,
Right.
and it would increase the amount that goes to the charters. In that case, Mr. Dennison, that would be
Absolutely.
an argument that says it's win-win, as long as, of course, it doesn't raise the tax rate and create a
Yeah,
problem for
no,
the
I know.
taxpayers, which could perhaps be accomplished at some point in the future within the growth rate if it's robust enough.
I've, spoken with directors at 2 of the 3 charter schools in the county, and with the understanding that it is a win-win situation. When our budget is fully funded, then more money passes through to our charter school students. And I think that the understanding is beginning to come through. Would it be easier if we didn't even have to pass it through, if it just went straight from the county to the charter schools? Well, yes. But until that happens, then we will be good stewards of that money. and we will send it right on through.
Yes, ma'am, we will. It's never been our intention to do otherwise.
All right, more questions for
Questions or
Mr.
feedback?
Cox or Dr. Grimacy? I'm still concerned about teacher numbers, and, you know, we want our classified staff taken care of as well. So we're just gonna have to see what we can do with this.
Madam Chairman, there could be a lot of fair criticisms of what we've offered, but we hope that what we've come down on the side this year is the side of recognizing the county's own projections, the county's own budget policy, the desire not to raise taxes, and we've come down on that side. And we've tried different approaches in the past. We're just trying a different approach this year, but we certainly yield to the board's judgment as you move towards your own budget a month from now after the next week's public hearing. If I could just remind the public that the budget hearing will be part of our meeting, which will be conducted at Carthage Elementary School next week. Same start times for individuals that want to speak up, speak during, with respect to the budget during the budget hearing. Same parameters as always. Please sign up by 6:15 at the latest.
Well, I certainly hope we'll hear from our public at that time, and that the commissioners might hear from them as well when the budget is passed on. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, that completes the administration's reports and recommendations.
All right. All right, so, excuse me, thank you very much for that. Gives us all a lot to think over. We are going to move on into board comments, and I'd like to take a moment to go first to share with you a little update on healthcare situations that could manifest across the United States, because there's been quite a lot of concern expressed about the school system and what might happen if there's a possible outbreak of the coronavirus in our community. And of course, as we know, as of this time, there are no known cases of the virus in North Carolina. However, Moore County Schools already has in place controls for infectious disease outbreaks, which are enacted when something like this occurs. We might think of the earlier outbreak of the flu and strep throat that occurred in the West Pine area already this year, which necessitated shutting down school operations after school dismissal one day and doing some extra cleaning and moving materials around, and I want to use the term fumigating, but I guess that's not quite right.
Sanitizing.
Sanitizing, thank you, to make sure that our students could come back into a clean situation. First of all, however, we all know, and we're hearing this over and over, the number one step in preventing the spread of disease, first of all, is by limiting contact with sick individuals. So please, if your child is sick, do not send him to school. Keep him at home until chances to infect others have passed. If you are sick, do not be a martyr and come on to school to do your volunteer shift because you feel obligated. Help us stop the spread of illness in this simple way. And this applies to not just the coronavirus, but to strep throat, to a bad cold, whatever. Less contact is better. Also encourage students and faculty and parents, all of us, to wash hands as frequently as possible and as soon as you get home each day. Someone told me, just go in the door of your house and go straight to the bathroom and wash your hands and eliminate those germs remaining in your home. We have other things already in the works. The Moore County Schools is obviously continuing to monitor information. A district administration official attends weekly update calls with the North Carolina Communicable Disease Branch and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Moore County Schools also receive alerts from national and local health agencies, and staff are staying in close contact with the Director of Nursing at the County Health Department. Each week, school nurses meet to discuss the latest updates on the spread of the virus, the symptoms to look for, and clinical signs and precautions that are used in hospital settings. The Office of Student Support Services is monitoring school-sponsored out-of-state student travel. Today, on Monday, March 2nd, our senior staff and members of the Office of Student Support Services met to discuss the latest updates from the CDC and the state of North Carolina and the Moore County Health Department. The Moore County Schools have a detailed pandemic influenza plan that has been and will continue to be utilized in the event of a coronavirus spread to North Carolina and our community. Every disinfectant currently supplied to Moore County schools has been confirmed by the manufacturers to be effective in killing and eliminating the coronavirus. The procedures for disinfecting are the same as any other virus, such as MRSA, influenza, or H1N1. Our maintenance crew has been equipped with new backpack sprayers, which allow an aerial disinfectant spraying, which more effectively and efficiently cleans a classroom. And please note that if it becomes necessary, plans are already underway if we had to provide ongoing instruction if the schools were to be closed for an extended period of time, taking into account that family resources do not always allow for online classes or the use of the internet. We will continue to monitor and, make and take precautions as need be. So before I ask for questions from the board, let me emphasize again, the control of this illness, indeed the control of any illness, starts at home. Do not send your children to school sick. Encourage hand washing by all. Let's fight it together. So, board comments, questions about the monitoring of the virus. Any other comments you would like to add today?
By me.
I have a quick comment. I was fortunate enough to attend the Moore County Reading Association meeting Saturday, and had a good attendance and a good speaker. But more importantly, to share with the community that Moore County Reading Association has 63 authors that are state winners and 9 illustrators, of which several of them are going to be in the book for state winners. So I think that's absolutely marvelous of our teachers and parents to encourage our writers and illustrators to be at the state level. They'll have a local celebration on April 23rd at Pinecrest High School at 5 o'clock. And there's a state Young Authors celebration with all the state winners in Winston-Salem on Saturday, March 21st at 1 o'clock. And I've attended several of these, and it's really exciting to see the children get their books and realize that they are now a published author.
Ms. Wallen-Miller, anything from you?
I just wanted to say 2 things. One, I met one of our McDeeds Creek students out at a Kiwanis breakfast, and I asked her, she was in 5th grade, and I said, so tell me, what is exciting about the school? Since we've been to Aberdeen Elementary now to see the construction, and McDeeds is finished, and Pinehurst we just launched. And I was expecting her to say something about the building, and she didn't, and she said to have a project room. She loves going into the project room to get her hands on materials and to do some fun projects. And that just reminds me that we're not doing this just for the buildings, we're doing it for the learning that's happening in the building, and that was really cool to hear that from a 5th grader and to have her get that. She didn't talk about the playground or the lunchroom or anything like that. The second thing is, I know we have some Rotarians in the room and listening, and I just want to say those dictionaries have gone out. I have seen pictures of 3rd graders receiving those dictionaries, and I just want to thank every single person who's a Rotarian or who has donated to the Rotary or attended any events, because those dictionaries are priceless in the hands of our children, and I'm just so grateful that every single 3rd grade classroom in Moore County, and I believe it's public and private schools too, so it's all schools and charters, and that's just an amazing opportunity for our kids, so shout out to them.
It's the funniest thing to see them get this old-fashioned dictionary and be so excited about it.
My daughter read hers. I would say cover to cover, but that's not true. She started the first 15 pages. The first week, she just went through every page. I mean, it's fun. It's a great thing.
Ms. Caldwell? Good. Ms. Thompson? Okay. All right, well, thank you to our, oh, he said he didn't want to, you said you didn't have, yeah, he was good. Okay. Thank you to our senior staff, especially Mr. Cox's office, put this budget underway, and we'll give it serious consideration here in the next couple weeks as we move on. And with that, Mr.
I move
Dennison?
the meeting be adjourned.
All right, motion by Mr. Dennison, second by Dr. Brown. All in favor?